Chapter 1243. Ningyu, is your soul sanctified? After taking Gongsun Ningyu away for a distance, Morongyu put her down and asked at the same time. Gongsun Ningyu was startled, and a hint of panic flashed at her eyes. Her face was a little red, and her expression was a little hesitant. She seemed to be hesitating whether to tell Morongyu the truth. Without reading Gongsun Ningyu's mind, Morongyu knew what she was thinking when he saw her face. So he smiled and said, "I'm just asking casually. If you don't want to say it, you don't have to." Gongsun Ningyu's face was a little red, and she was a little ashamed. If she didn't meet Morongyu, she might have been humiliated by those people. How could there be today? Gongsun Ningyu, you absolutely can't hide anything from Big Brother Morongyu. Gongsun Ningyu inwardly berated herself as she quickly walked up to him. "Brother Morong, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just that my father said that my soul sanctified must not be leaked. Otherwise, we will all have a bad ending. So, I'm really sorry." Looking at the pitiful Gongsun Ningyu, Morongyu reached out and stroked her head and said with a smile, "You are still inexperienced. How can you say it out loud? What if it were someone else? Would you say it out so easily? Just as your father said, you can't tell a second person about your soul sanctified. Otherwise, it will be bad for you." Morongyu sighed and said. In fact, even if Gongsun Ningyu didn't answer, Morongyu already had an answer. Because when Morongyu asked her, she didn't deny it or change the topic, but chose to acquiesce. If it were someone else, they would be sure that her soul sanctified. "Brother Morong, I won't be like this in the future." Gongsun Ningyu was a little ashamed. Her father used to take care of her. Her social experience was too little, and she didn't know how sinister people were. "But, Brother Morong, how do you know that my soul's sanctified?" Gongsun Ningyu lowered her head in shame, but after walking for a while, she couldn't help but ask. Morongyu smiled at her and said, "Soul-devouring island has a soul attack. Everyone has more or less reacted differently to the soul attack. But you acted as if nothing had happened. If it wasn't for the fact that your soul has become a saint and is much stronger than an ordinary saint, why would you be like this?" Gongsun Ningyu nodded slightly. "I see. Then do I have to pretend to be attacked in the future? You're worth teaching." Morongyu smiled faintly. "But Big Brother Morong, why didn't you have any reaction? Could it be that your soul is also sanctified?" Gongsun Ningyu sized up Morongyu with a puzzled expression. "You could say that. But don't tell anyone else about this. Otherwise, it will be disadvantageous to us." Gongsun Ningyu nodded solemnly. "I definitely won't tell anyone else. However, Big Brother Morong, where are we going?" "We're looking for a soul saint artifact." Morongyu smiled. Before Gongsun Ningyu could react, he had already used his power to sweep her up and flew towards the depths of the island. The island was about 100 million miles in size. The closer they were to the center of the island, the stronger the soul attack. Therefore, everyone, including Morongyu, flew towards the center of the island. During this process, the two of them inevitably encountered some people who wanted to kill them. However, these people weren't very strong. Morongyu directly annihilated their souls and killed them. At the same time, Morongyu also obtained some treasures. However, these are just ordinary treasures. There weren't any items that contained strong light. "Ningyu, wait a minute." On this day, Morongyu suddenly called out to Gongsun Ningyu, who was walking in front of him. Although the island wasn't very big, the closer they were to the center, the stronger the soul attack was. Therefore, their speed naturally slowed down. In fact, the two of them were still very relaxed. At least now, the soul attack didn't cause any substantial damage to their souls. However, this might not be the case for the others. Therefore, they slowed down because they didn't want to attract others' attention. "What's wrong? Someone has designs on us again?" Hearing Morongyu's words, Gongsun Ningyu couldn't help but feel a little nervous. At the same time, she kept looking around. Morongyu shook his head. His eyes flickered with a blazing divine light as he looked at a small valley in front of him. "Big Brother Morong, what good things are there? You're like a hungry wolf that has seen meat." After a few days of getting along, Gongsun Ningyu was no longer as shy as before. She could already joke with Morongyu. "Good things. Moronyu looked ahead with shining eyes. At the same time, he had already walked up quickly. What he saw was indeed a good thing, because in the depths of the small valley, an incomparably powerful light soared into the sky. Looking at the intensity of a light, it was at least a mid-grade saint artifact. It might even be a high-grade saint artifact. Big Brother Moron, this valley doesn't have any treasures. There's only a lightning, poisonous spirit condor. What treasures are there? The valley wasn't big, and one could see the end of it at a glance. Therefore, Gongsun Ningyu said so. Moronyu just smiled and strode towards the back of the valley. At the back of the valley was the demonic beast called the lightning, poisonous spirit condor. This demonic beast was born with a lightning saint godhead and could control lightning to a certain extent. Although it was just ordinary lightning, ordinary saints were unwilling to provoke this demonic beast. After all, no one liked to be struck by lightning until it was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Moreover, in addition to its lightning attacks, this demonic beast's entire body was poisonous. Even its saint godhead was poisonous. Therefore, even its saint core was worthless, and no one was willing to provoke it. Could it be the lightning, poisonous spirit condor? But I've come across some before, and Big Brother Moron didn't provoke it. Gongsun Ningyu was puzzled, but she still followed behind Moronyu. Moronyu's target was naturally not the lightning, poisonous spirit condor, but the demonic beast's nest. There was a huge but ordinary stone in front of the demonic beast's nest. Perhaps it was because the lightning, poisonous spirit condor frequently entered and exited the nest, but the surface of the stone was incomparably shiny. It was this stone that was exuding a radiance comparable to a high-grade saint artifact. If Moronyu refined it, it could raise his cultivation by a small realm, or even 2 small realms. It could help him reach the 9th order true saint realm, or even break through the true saint realm and enter the great saint realm. Ningyu, wait for me here. I'll be back soon. Moronyu instructed Ningyu, and then his figure disappeared in a flicker. Rumble, perhaps it sensed Moronyu's intention. The moment Moronyu disappeared, the lightning, poisonous spirit condor screeched fiercely. In an instant, streaks of lightning appeared out of thin air, enveloping the entire valley. Gongsun Ningyu jumped in fright, and her figure blurred as she retreated. At the same time, she looked ahead with a worried expression. To Moronyu, ordinary tribulation lightning couldn't do anything to him. What more ordinary lightning? Even if he didn't put up any resistance, these lightning bolts couldn't hurt him. However, Moronyu didn't have the mood to tangle with the lightning, poisonous spirit condor. In a flash, he appeared in front of the lightning, poisonous spirit condor's nest, and his big hand reached out to grab the stone. Screech! The lightning, poisonous spirit condor screeched when it saw that its lightning couldn't do anything to Moronyu. Then, its body, which was the size of a buffalo, turned into a stream of light and shot down towards Moronyu. A pair of sharp claws comparable to a sacred artifact tore through the air, breaking through the obstruction of space, and directly appeared above Moronyu's head and then viciously clawed down. The lightning, poisonous spirit condor was at least a 5th-step great saint. With a claw, even a small mountain would be crushed, not to mention Moronyu's head. Soul attack! Moronyu didn't think, and a soul flame of primal chaos strangled the lightning, poisonous spirit condor. Screech! The lightning, poisonous spirit condor instinctively felt danger. Before the soul flame of primal chaos arrived, its attack stopped. At the same time, it quickly retreated. However, how could its speed be faster than the soul flame of primal chaos? At the same time, Moronyu's soul flame of primal chaos rushed into its spiritual space. Screech! The lightning, poisonous spirit condor let out an incomparably shrill scream, and its body trembled violently, almost falling from the sky. However, in the end, it didn't fall, but flew into the distance. This shocked Moronyu. If it was an ordinary 5th-step great saint, they would be seriously injured, if not dead, after being hit by a sudden soul attack. However, This lightning poisonous spirit condor didn't suffer any injuries? Could it be because it lived on this soul-devouring island? Its soul was much stronger than others in the same realm? This thought only flashed in Murong Yu's mind, but his hands didn't slow down at all. When the lightning poisonous spirit condor was repelled, he had already grabbed the huge rock. His big hand exerted force, and suddenly, rumble, after a series of earth shaking, the huge rock was uprooted by Murong Yu. Then, with a swoosh, it disappeared from his hand, and was already kept in the Hichu Luo shoe. Screech, the lightning poisonous spirit condor, constantly hovered above the valley, letting out a series of urgent screeches full of killing intent. However, if one looked carefully, there was fear in its eyes as it looked at Murong Yu below, but didn't dare to approach. Haha, Brother Condor, I'm sorry. Murong Yu laughed heartily after obtaining the stone that was comparable to a high-grade saint artifact. Then, he appeared beside Gongsun Ningyu with a single step and prepared to leave with her. Murong Yu? What a coincidence! Just as they were about to leave, a somewhat surprised voice came from the side. Then, Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu saw a few figures flying over from afar. Is it really coincidence? Murong Yu looked at the people approaching quickly and sneered in his heart. Chapter 1244. Swish! Swish! The newcomer's speed was extremely fast. In a few flashes, he had already landed in front of Murong Yu and Jian Wushuang. Aside from the leader, the rest of the group vaguely formed an encirclement, surrounding Murong Yu and Jian Wushuang from a distance, as if to prevent them from escaping. Murong Yu, what a coincidence! This island is so big, I didn't think we would encounter it. You should have gained something during this time, right? It's time to pay your fare. Wu Bai stood in front of Murong Yu and said to Murong Yu with a smile. As he spoke, his eyes constantly scanned Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu even saw a hint of hidden greed in his eyes. Murong Yu's face suddenly darkened. Although soul-devouring island is big, it's not full of treasures. The two of us have gained nothing. We'll pay you the fare before we leave the secret realm of the vast sea. Before Wu Bai could speak, one of his subordinates sneered. Do you think we're all philanthropists? If everyone was like you and didn't pay the ferry fare, would we still be able to survive? Kid, pay the fare obediently. Otherwise, you'll have to stay on soul-devouring island forever. Gongsun Ningyu's face suddenly changed and looked at Murong Yu with a little panic. If they didn't leave on the Moonbone demon ship, they wouldn't be able to move forward in the endless sea and would have to stay on soul-devouring island forever. Murong Yu's face changed slightly and narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed between his brows. Are you threatening me? Murong Yu looked at the person who spoke with a cold expression, and murderous intent began to surge in his heart. Murong Yu, we're not threatening anyone. You're on our ship, so it's natural for you to pay us. If you're not willing to pay, then Are you going to rob us? Gongsun Ning, you didn't know where the courage came from, but she directly interrupted Wu Bai. Murong Yu was flabbergasted. He turned around and saw the little beauty clenching her fists as she glared angrily at Wu Bai, her eyes spitting fire. Obviously, he was very angry. Little beauty, you're right. Today we're going to snatch it. You have to hand it over whether you want to or not. At the same time, the one who spoke was a middle-aged, wretched man. As he spoke, his eyes constantly swept over Gongsun Ningyu's youthful body with a lewd expression. Even if you want to rob us, we don't have any treasures with us. Murong Yu's face was gloomy as he looked at the wretched middle-aged man who was staring at Gongsun Ningyu. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Murong Yu, let's not beat around the bush. You just need to give me your cauldron. Otherwise, Wu Bai sneered, his face full of greed. He had already been shocked by Murong Yu the first time he saw him. How could a first-order saint fly freely above the sea? Just how powerful was that treasure on him? When he saw the Yin-Yang cauldron, Wu Bai was already greedy. However, for some reason, he couldn't make a move on the ship. Otherwise, he would have to kill everyone on the ship. However, once it was leaked, it would affect their organization's reputation. At that time, he wouldn't need anyone else to kill him. His organization would kill him. Therefore, after arriving at Soul-Devouring Island, he secretly followed Murong-Yu. Now, he finally decided to make a move. Murong-Yu's eyes flashed coldly. If that's the case, then let's do it. But let me warn you in advance. There are many people in this world who wanted to kill me, but they all died, and I'm standing here. Ha! You're just a first-order saint. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A great sage laughed. With a single step, he crossed an immeasurable distance and directly arrived in front of Murong-Yu. His huge fist exploded with a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and earth as it rapidly smashed towards Murong-Yu's head. Die! Murong-Yu roared, and a torrent of soul flame of primordial chaos rushed over. While he was attacking with his soul, his physical attack wasn't slow either. 1,000-army elephant pulling fist also crashed toward the great saint's head. However, what surprised Murong-Yu was that Gongsun Ningyu also made a move at the same time as he attacked. A soul attack went straight past Murong-Yu and rushed into the great saint's soul space. The great saint's soul was originally an ordinary soul. It couldn't withstand the soul attack of either Murong-Yu or Ningyu, let alone both of them at the same time. With a pu sound, his soul was directly minced into pieces. However, before he could scream, Murong-Yu's fist had already smashed his head into pieces. The great saint was dead, unable to withstand a single blow. Seeing this scene, Wu Bai and the others were shocked. None of them had a soul sage, so they didn't notice Murong-Yu and Ningyu's soul attack at all. They all thought that the great saint was directly killed by Murong-Yu with one punch. That was why they were shocked. A first-order sage killed a low-level great saint with one punch? That great saint didn't seem to be killed by Murong-Yu. On the contrary, it was more like suicide. Ningyu next. After killing this great saint with one punch, Murong-Yu locked onto the second great saint. After calling out to Gongsun Ningyu, Murong-Yu disappeared in an instant and pounced on the great saint. Gongsun Ningyu wasn't stupid. After receiving Murong-Yu's hint, her soul attack had already strangled the other great saint like a stormy sea. Seeing Murong-Yu pouncing over, the great saint couldn't help but sneer. A great saint was at least 100 times stronger than a sage. Wasn't it easy to kill Murong-Yu? However, in the next moment, he was horrified. Two incomparably terrifying soul attacks directly rushed into his soul space, strangling his soul. At this moment, he finally realized why the great saint was killed by Murong-Yu with one punch. Killing with one punch was an illusion. The truth was that the great saint's soul was destroyed. Therefore, the shocked great saint immediately wanted to retreat. However, how could his speed compare to the soul attack? With its chi sound, the great saint's soul was torn apart like a piece of cloth, turning into billions of fragments. With his soul torn into so many fragments, he died instantly. At this moment, Murong-Yu had already rushed forward and smashed him to pieces with a single punch. In a few breaths, two great saints were killed. Wu Bai and the others were deeply shocked and involuntarily took a few steps back. They all looked at Murong-Yu with horrified eyes. They couldn't understand why Murong-Yu was so terrifying. Soul attack. You're soul sage. Finally, Wu Bai reacted and exclaimed. Murong-Yu just smiled indifferently. With a thought, he had already taken out the dragon bone flaming needle. It floated above his head and trembled slightly. Soul sage? If my soul really was a soul sage, you would have died long ago, Murong-Yu said indifferently. He slightly activated the dragon bone flaming needle, emitting waves of soul fluctuations. Soul sage weapon. Wu Bai's face revealed an intense look of greed. Murong-Yu really had a lot of treasures on him, especially this soul sage weapon that seemed to be even stronger than the yin-yang cauldron. I must kill Murong-Yu and seize his sage weapon. Wu Bai's heart burned more and more, and he became more and more greedy. At this point, he had already denied that Murong-Yu's soul was a soul sage. Today, all of you will die. It just so happens that we don't have the Yu Luo bone demon boat. Murong-Yu looked at Wu Bai and the others and said indifferently, a soul sage weapon is indeed powerful, but I wonder how much power you can unleash? Wu Bai sneered, but his figure kept retreating. Clearly, he knew that as long as he retreated a certain distance, Murong Yu's soul attack would have no effect on him. Kill! Murong Yu suddenly roared, and his figure flashed, rushing towards Wu Bai. Wu Bai was shocked, and he quickly retreated. However, just as he was about to retreat, Murong Yu's figure abruptly came to a halt. Then, he turned around in midair and pounced towards the wretched-looking middle-aged man. The soul flame of primal chaos burst out, and Murong Yu pushed it to the extreme. It cooperated with Gongsun Ningyu's soul attack and directly rushed over. Although the wretched middle-aged man was prepared, he did not expect Murong Yu to come back and directly lock onto him. Thus, tragedy befell him. Immediately, his soul was destroyed. This time, Murong Yu did not have to hide to destroy this person's physical body. Instead, he directly switched to Murong Yu and aimed at another person. This person was immediately scared silly, and his first reaction was to retreat. However, his speed could never compare to a soul attack. Therefore, no matter how he retreated, no matter how he defended, he could not stop the soul attack from invading. Under the joint attack of Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu, this person was killed again. Before Wu Bai could react, all the people he brought were killed, and he was the only one left. He was also the strongest one. At this time, he also stopped and looked at Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu with a gloomy face. "You two are very good. Kill yourselves." Wu Bai was angry, and he gritted his teeth. So many people died. How was he going to explain to the organization? "Now it seems like you are the one who is going to kill yourself, right?" Murong Yu sneered. "Wu Bai, do you think you can escape from my soul attack?" Wu Bai's face was gloomy, and his killing intent was overflowing. "If you think I am one of those trash, you are wrong. Today, I will let you see that a sacred weapon with a soul attack is not an invincible existence." As he spoke, Wu Bai retreated again. At the same time, the aura on his body began to rise crazily. A large hand stretched out, and in the next moment, a monstrous hand condensed, covering the sky like a huge, sacred mountain and crushing the sky. It emitted a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, and enveloped Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu, suppressing them from all directions. Although soul attacks were terrifying, they had to be able to reach the other party's soul. Moreover, soul attacks could not resist physical power at all. Chapter 1245. Covering the Sky and Earth. Everything within a radius of millions of miles was enveloped by Wu Bai's power. Suddenly, Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu were like a lone boat in a stormy sea that could be torn apart at any time. At this moment, Murong Yu's heart was suddenly enveloped by an incomparably strong aura of death. He was already like this, let alone Gongsun Ningyu. At this time, Gongsun Ningyu was already pale with fright. "Big brother Murong, what should we do? Our soul attacks can't reach them at all. We can't resist this power at all." Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murong Yu with a face full of horror. She even grabbed Murong Yu's arm with both hands, and her grip was so strong that it hurt Murong Yu's arm. Chi. The power had not yet blasted down, but the air was constantly being crushed. The huge pressure had already suppressed down, and the clothes of Gongsun Ningyu and Gongsun Ningyu were reduced to dust. Even Gongsun Ningyu's body had begun to crack, and she became a bloody person in an instant. Murong Yu's strength was much stronger than Gongsun Ningyu's. Therefore, he was not injured yet. However, if this continued, he would eventually be killed here. "Ningyu, go into my spatial treasure first." While speaking, without waiting for Gongsun Ningyu's consent, he had already put Gongsun Ningyu into the Hichu Luo Shu. Although Wu Bai's attack was powerful, it was still unable to break through space. Therefore, Murong Yu could still use the Hichu Luo Shu. After putting Gongsun Ningyu into the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu also flashed into the Hichu Luo Shu. In the next moment, with a teleportation, the Hichu Luo Shu left the place. Rumble. Just as the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo disappeared, Wu Bai's attack also rapidly bombarded. Suddenly, the sky fell and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. The earth was directly raised. However, Wu Bai's face was very ugly, because he saw that Murong Yu and Gong Sun Ning Yu had suddenly disappeared. It was impossible that they were killed by him. Boom, boom, boom. Wu Bai, who had an ugly expression on his face, was infuriated. He punched out again and again. The ground that had been destroyed and flattened by Murong Yu sank down again, trying to suppress Murong Yu. However, no matter how he attacked, he could not find any trace of Murong Yu and his companion. Could it be that he has already escaped? Impossible. They're only saints. How can they leave my attack range? I'm a high-level great sage. Inwardly, Wu Bai was howling with rage. Seeing all kinds of treasures, especially the soul attack saint artifact, fly away from him, how could he be willing? Whoosh! At this moment, an extremely strong and dangerous aura enveloped his heart. High-level great sages reacted extremely quickly. Immediately, he turned into a streak of light and shot forward. However, the dangerous aura did not weaken. On the contrary, it became even more intense. All of a sudden, he felt something strange in his soul space, following which his expression changed greatly. Soul attack. Before he could finish his roar, an extremely violent soul flame of primal chaos fiercely bombarded his soul. Boom! A loud sound rang out, and Wu Bai's soul was almost smashed into pieces. However, the soul of a high-level great sage was not so easily annihilated. He was only severely injured. After suffering the attack, Wu Bai unleashed his speed and swiftly fled without a trace. He knew that he had fallen into Murong Yu's ambush. Yes, he had indeed fallen into a trap. After Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luoshu world, he immediately teleported to the other side and left Wu Bai's attack range. After Wu Bai's attack missed, Murong Yu teleported back. Using his invisibility ability, he secretly came to Wu Bai's side. However, he did not dare to get too close. After all, although he was very confident in his invisibility ability, he was not a high-level great sage. However, high-level great sages weren't to be trifled with, and they would sense something if they got too close. Therefore, after a certain distance, he directly launched a soul attack. However, Murong Yu still underestimated Wu Bai's reaction. This round of attack did not kill Wu Bai's soul, but only severely injured it. Teleport. Murong Yu was still hiding in the void. He teleported again and caught up. During this process, his soul constantly locked onto Wu Bai and strangled him. Although Wu Bai had fled at his fastest speed, Murong Yu's speed was not slow. However, Murong Yu's teleportation wasn't slow either. At the very least, he wouldn't be able to shake Murong Yu off in a short period of time. Therefore, his soul was constantly bombarded by the soul flame of primal chaos. Escape, unable to escape. Resist, unable to resist. Wu Bai could only passively endure the soul attack. This made him extremely angry. At the same time, he cursed in his heart, "Damn soul attack, which bastard created this kind of soul sanctification and refined a sacred weapon with soul attack." The terrifying soul flame of primal chaos attacked Wu Bai's soul wave after wave like a tide. The injury to his soul was getting worse and worse. Die for me. Wu Bai was furious. No longer caring about his soul being attacked, he raised his terrifying power to the extreme. Suddenly, a powerful force that could destroy heaven and earth swept out in all directions like a tide with his body as the center. Everywhere it passed, the air was annihilated, the mountains were pushed down, and the rivers were filled. Poof! It was still beyond his power to resist the power of a high-level great saint. Murong Yu, who was hiding in the void, was directly forced out of the void and vomited blood. At the same time, his physical body also cracked. An ordinary sacred body could not withstand a single blow. Any saint could severely injure him. "Little bastard, I see that you are arrogant. I see that you are arrogant." Wu Bai might have realized that if he blindly ran away, his soul would eventually be annihilated. He could not escape Murong Yu's attack before his soul was annihilated. The only way out was to take the initiative to attack. As long as he killed Murong Yu, he would have a chance to escape. Therefore, he no longer ran away and took the initiative to attack Morongyu. In his opinion, he could kill Morongyu before his soul was annihilated. In fact, his idea was right. He just burst out with power and did not take the initiative to attack Morongyu, but he was already unable to resist. Morongyu gritted his teeth. He did not run away. If he teleported away, who knew if he could find Wu Bai when he returned? Moreover, they were on this island. Once Wu Bai entered the depths of the sea, he would not be able to do anything to him. When did he want to fight Wu Bai head-on? Let's see who can hold on first. Seeing that Morongyu did not run away, he stood where he was and looked at him with a cold expression. Wu Bai was instantly furious. With a loud roar, he threw a punch at Morongyu from afar. Suddenly, a power that was like a stormy sea rushed over. It covered the sky and earth, intimidating all the worlds in the heavens. At the same time that Wu Bai attacked, Morongyu also moved. He took a step and disappeared on the spot. He directly teleported away. During this process, Morongyu urged the soul flame of chaos with all his strength and crazily rushed over. Although Morongyu wanted to fight head-on, it did not mean that he wanted to directly resist Wu Bai's power. That way, his physical body would directly shatter, and he would not even have time to repair it. Boom! 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 Both sides burst out with their strongest attacks. Morongyu's physical body crazily cracked, and parts of it were constantly being annihilated. However, under his powerful life force, as soon as it was destroyed, it would be repaired again. At the same time that Morongyu was constantly being bombarded, Wu Bai's soul was also being crazily strangled. However, he did not have the ability to repair his soul. As a result, his injuries were rapidly worsening. In fact, both of them were in the same danger. Either of them could kill the other. After exchanging blows like this for a long time, Morongyu began to feel somewhat powerless. The speed of his physical body shattering was too fast. Even his life force was unable to repair the damage. In fact, the amount of energy he absorbed and the amount of energy he consumed could no longer reach a balance. After all, he now needed energy to protect his physical body and control the dragon bone flaming needle. He also needed to convert a large amount of energy into life force. It should be known that even a high-level great saint could only make the dragon bone flaming needle explode with power for 2 or 3 breaths of time before its power was exhausted. On the other hand, Morongyu had been using the dragon bone flaming needles non-stop. One could easily imagine how much energy he was consuming. Of course, even so, there was no possibility of his energy being completely exhausted. Most importantly, he realized that his soul was already on the verge of collapse. After his soul became a great saint, it had not been improved. After such a long time of fighting, the soul flame of chaos was almost completely exhausted. Without soul attacks, Morongyu could no longer be a match for Wu Bai. However, Wu Bai was not having a good time either. Boom! Boom! After exchanging a blow, the two of them retreated violently and stopped their attacks. This is the last blow. Either you die, or you die. Morongyu took a deep breath. At the same time, he secretly opened a hole in the Hichu Luo shoe. Kill! Kill! Almost at the same time, both of them roared and rushed forward again. Bang! After a loud explosion, Morongyu's body exploded from Wu Bai's punch. His entire body was pulverized. Ha! Wu Bai laughed loudly when he saw that Morongyu had been blown up by him. However, his laughter came to an abrupt end. At the same time, his body, which was originally suspended in the void, fell violently. With a plop sound, Wu Bai fell to the ground. Without a sound, he completely lost his life force. Morongyu, whose physical body had been blown up, did not reform a new body for a long time. Could it be that Morongyu was also killed? Brother Morong, don't scare me. Gongsun Ningyu stepped out of the He-Tu and Luo shoe that had yet to be closed. She looked around in horror. However, the surroundings were quiet. Where was Morongyu? There was not even an echo. Gongsun Ningyu suddenly panicked. Her nose turned sour, and large drops of tears involuntarily slid down from her cheeks. Chapter 1246. Gongsun Ningyu stood in place blankly, looking at the place where Murongyu last appeared, and tears flowed down her cheeks. She didn't move for a long time. Suddenly, Gongsun Ningyu, who was crying alone, saw the void in front of her suddenly ripple like water. Gongsun Ningyu's heart moved, and her eyes stared motionlessly at the slightly trembling void. Gradually, a smile appeared on her face. In her sight, a phantom condensed from power was slowly condensing from the illusory. Not long after, Murongyu's figure appeared in Gongsun Ningyu's sight. "Big brother Murong, it's great that you're okay." Gongsun Ningyu cheered, rushed up, and hugged Murongyu's shoulder. She raised her head a little immaturely and pushed against Murongyu's arm. "Okay, I'm fine. Let me go first, and let me take a breath." Murongyu felt a little embarrassed, so he quickly broke away from Gongsun Ningyu's embrace. Gongsun Ningyu obediently let go of her hands and looked at Murongyu with a smile. Her heart, which had been raised before, finally settled down. "Why didn't you put away the spoils of war?" After Gongsun Ningyu let go of her hand, Murongyu waved his hand and took the storage rings of Wu Bai and others. Gongsun Ningyu rolled her eyes. She thought that Murongyu was really out of breath from her hug. She immediately said, "Big brother Murong, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Murongyu replied, and at the same time shattered Wu Bai's body with a palm. Plop! A piece of armor fell to the ground. Murongyu's eyes flashed with a blazing light. This was because this armor was emitting an incomparably intense light. It was the light he saw on Wu Bai's body before. The light of your armor is definitely not inferior to an undead stage powerhouse. Why didn't Wu Bai use this armor? If he did, I'm afraid I would have been killed long ago. Murongyu thought and took the armor into his hand. After searching for a while, Murongyu waved his hand and entered the Hichu Luoshu world with Gongsun Ningyu. "Ningyu, check these spoils of war." I'm going to adjust my breath. After giving all the things he got from Wu and the others to Gongsun Ningyu, Murongyu left. Gongsun Ningyu furrowed her brows as she looked in the direction Murongyu had disappeared. A trace of worry flashed through the depths of her eyes as she silently said to herself, "Big brother Murong, you'll be fine." Then what about Murongyu? He could be fine. Or what could be said was he was fine. Because it took half a daytime Ningyu, Ningyu's, Ningyu, Ningyu's Ningyu, and Ningyu. This was because his power was destroyed at the same time his physical body was destroyed. For a physical body at the level of a sacred body, after a part of it was destroyed, it required an extremely large amount of power to reform it. And after the whole body was destroyed, the power required was even more terrifying. If it were an ordinary person, after their whole body was destroyed, they would need to consume half of their power to reform their physical body. Moreover, this newly formed physical body was only an ordinary physical body. If one wanted to restore their physical body to its peak, the consumption would be even greater. Especially in Murongyu's case, where both his physical body and power were destroyed at the same time, it would not be as simple as half a day for him to restore his physical body. If he only relied on himself, he might not be able to restore his physical body to its peak even after tens of thousands of years. Murongyu's tree of life absorbed a large amount of power. It was precisely because of this that he could restore his physical body to its peak state in half a day. However, his physical strength had been restored to its peak. However, his soul had dried up. It was even impossible for him to release the soul chaos flame. Murongyu also had no way to restore his soul to its peak in a short time because he did not have a soul cultivation method and knew nothing about it. He was only worried about his soul being damaged. Fortunately, his soul was only in a state of exhaustion and was not damaged. Moreover, Murongyu was pleasantly surprised to find that apart from the soul chaos flame being exhausted this time, the level of his soul seemed to have increased. After checking again and confirming that there was nothing wrong with his soul, Murongyu was relieved and returned to Gongsun Ningyu's side. "Big brother Murong, I've sorted these things into categories, but I don't know which things are more precious, so..." Seeing Murongyu walk over, Gongsun Ningyu immediately said excitedly. Murongyu nodded and casually glanced around, seeing all kinds of treasures piled up like small mountains. Among them, the most eye-catching was the Moon Luo's bone demon ship. Ningyu, take whatever you like. Don't be shy. After all, you also contributed. Murongyu glanced around and said to Ningyu with a smile. Gongsun Ningyu hurriedly shook her head. I don't need these. Take this armor. Although your soul attack is powerful, your physical body is too weak. Murongyu picked up the armor that he took from Wu Bai and checked it as he spoke. He could not help but be shocked. This armor was at least high-grade sacred tool level. It could be seen from the intense light emitted from it. Murongyu wasn't surprised by this. Instead, he was surprised by the armor's might. The armor was cold to the touch, as cold as 10,000-year profound ice. When Murongyu's divine sense came into contact with this armor, a message was directly transmitted to his mind from the armor. It was the armor's information. The armor was called Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor. It had no offensive ability. However, it was extremely powerful. It could withstand the full power attack of a high-grade, undead stage expert. Moreover, in an emergency, the Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor would transform into a Cyan Phoenix to protect its owner. It was definitely a powerful sacred tool. Its value was 100 times higher than ordinary high-grade magic tools, or even more. Wu Bai, a high-grade great sage, actually has a treasure of this level. If he didn't get it by dumb luck, then there must be a powerful existence behind him. Murongyu thought, a cold light flashing through his eyes. He was not afraid that the person behind Wu Bai would seek revenge. He was just lucky. Fortunately, he had used a soul attack to kill Wu Bai. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill Wu Bai. He simply could not break through the Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor's defenses. No, big brother, you wear it. Gongsun Ningyu hurriedly shook her head and refused. Murongyu glared at her. If you don't want it, then don't follow me in the future. Gongsun Ningyu immediately deflated and took the Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor. However, when she was about to recognize the armor as its owner, she came into contact with that message. Then, her hand shook and the Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor was thrown away. Big brother Murong, this is too precious. I really can't take it. Gongsun Ningyu said with a determined expression. Murongyu did not speak and just stared at Gongsun Ningyu. Gongsun Ningyu was not to be outdone and directly stared back at Murongyu. Finally, after a long time, Gongsun Ningyu was defeated and weakly recognized the Cyan Phoenix Profound Een Armor as its owner. Then she put it on. Isn't this very good? Murongyu smiled. At the same time, he waved his hand and put the mountain of Saint crystals into a storage ring. Then, he handed it to Gongsun Ningyu. Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murongyu in shock. Her face was a little red, and she was a little excited. Big brother Murong, are you giving these to me? I really can't take them. These are useless to me, but you can use them to quickly improve your cultivation. Yes, you have a defensive saint artifact, but you still lack a few offensive saint artifacts. Although these saint artifacts are all low-rank saint artifacts, it's better than nothing. You can find a few. Gongsun Ningyu's eyes were wet and tears were swirling in her eyes. She was very grateful in her heart. Before this, her parents only had one low-rank saint artifact. Although they also had saint crystals, they were very few. It was not even enough for her to cultivate alone. But now, after meeting Murongyu, not only did she obtain a high-rank saint artifact that she did not even dare to dream of before, but also various low-rank saint artifacts, a large number of saint crystals, and treasures. Gongsun Ningyu did not know how to describe her feelings at this moment. All she felt was endless gratitude to Murongyu. Ningyu, let's rest here for a few days. Use the resources in your hands to make a breakthrough. Try to raise it as high as possible. Murongyu thought about it, and finally brought Gongsun Ningyu near the Saint Blood Crystal. Cultivating here can improve your comprehension. Try to make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Murongyu reminded her of some things to pay attention to before he left. Big brother Murong, I will definitely work hard to cultivate. When I'm strong, I will definitely repay today's kindness. After looking in the direction Murong-yu left for a long time, Gongsun Ningyu collected her thoughts and began to break through. Soul transcendence saints don't only cultivate their soul. Their physical cultivation is the same as other saints. After communicating with Gongsun Ningyu for a few days, he realized this point. He used to think that soul transcendence saints were the same as other saints and could only cultivate one aspect. He was happy for so long in vain, thinking that he was the only one who could dual cultivate. However, Murong-yu also knew that Gongsun Ningyu did not have any research on the soul, nor did she have any cultivation techniques. Her breakthrough was completely an accident. Therefore, the two of them could not communicate in this aspect at all. Murong-yu sat cross-legged on a mountain peak, and in front of him was a huge rock that was emitting a strong light. Primal chaos furnace, devour! Murong-yu shouted in his heart, opened his mouth, and sucked in fiercely. Immediately, the huge rock rapidly shrank and was sucked into his stomach with a shio sound, swallowing it into his dantian. Refine. The primal chaos furnace trembled slightly, and immediately the huge rock was refined directly, leaving behind an enormous amount of pure energy. Then, under Murong-yu's control, this energy was directly poured into his body. Therefore, his cultivation level began to rise rapidly. Chapter 1247. Murong-yu's strength was rising rapidly. Originally, he was only an 8th level sage. However, in less than half a day, he had broken through to the 9th level sage realm. Moreover, his cultivation level was still rising. 9th level sage, peak 9th level sage. In the end, Murong-yu's cultivation level stopped at the peak 9th level sage realm. He was only one step away from the great sage realm. However, this step was something that Murong-yu could not cross. His cultivation level stopped rising. This made Murong-yu a little depressed. This was because there was still a considerable amount of energy from the huge rock that had not entered his body. At this moment, the energy was still entering Murong-yu's body. Suddenly, Murong-yu's body began to swell like a rubber ball. If he could not refine or expel the energy from his body, Murong-yu's body would explode. Moreover, this kind of explosion was different from being blown up. If he was blown up by his own energy, it would cause serious damage to Murong-yu's body, meridians, and even dantian. Some injuries were difficult to heal even with the power of life. For example, if the primal chaos furnace exploded, Murong-yu did not even know if it could be reformed. To him, the primal chaos furnace must not disappear. Refine the body. With a thought, Murong-yu began to guide the energy from his meridians to his body. Like a god, every god's body was a divine body. However, above the divine body, there were 6 low-grade divine artifacts, middle-grade divine artifacts, and saint-grade divine artifacts. Among them, even a low-grade divine artifact body was much stronger than an ordinary body. It was the same for sages. As long as they were sages, they would have a divine body. However, above the divine body, there were 6 low-grade divine artifacts. There were very few low-grade divine artifacts in the holy world. This was because they were much stronger than ordinary divine bodies. After many battles, Murong-yu felt that he was weak. Therefore, he urgently wanted to raise the level of his divine body. However, how could the realm of the physical body be improved so easily? However, what surprised Murong-yu was that the power refined by the chaotic furnace could not only directly improve his cultivation realm, but could also refine his body and improve its level. At this time, under the guidance of Murong-yu, the incomparably pure energy began to crazily refine Murong-yu's body and meridians. His strength was constantly being consumed, but Murong-yu's physical body was constantly improving. In the end, when the power of the boulder was completely consumed, Murong-yu's physical body had also been upgraded to a new level. If the saint body was divided into 3 levels, Murong-yu's previous saint body was a low-level saint body. At the same time, this level was also the strength of the bodies of most saints. However, Murong-Yu's body had already reached the level of a mid-level saint body. It was at least 10 times stronger than before. Although there was still a long way to go before his body reached the level of a low-grade saint artifact. At least he was one step closer. Regarding this, Murong-Yu was more satisfied. After all, the improvement of strength was not something that could be done overnight. It had to be accumulated over a long period of time. It had not been long since he ascended to the holy world, but he had already reached a level that many saints could not reach in their lifetime. This was already very impressive. However, in terms of cultivation realm, Murong-Yu was a little depressed that he could not break through to the Great Sage realm. Moreover, he felt that it was not because of the chaotic celestial record. It seemed to be related to his soul. After the chaotic celestial record broke through to the 7th level, it could already support Murong-Yu's cultivation realm to the Great Sage realm. However, it was stuck now. Hichu, do you think it's because of his soul? Murong-Yu frowned slightly and communicated with Hichu. This situation reminded him of the Godhead in the past. Murong-Yu's cultivation realm could only be improved when the 3 Godheads were the same level. Otherwise, his cultivation realm would never be able to improve. Right now, there was no problem with the Saint Godhead. However, his soul did not improve. That is also possible. Hichu pondered for a moment before saying. He did not have any understanding of the soul becoming a saint, so he did not know what was going on. Murong-Yu was depressed. If it was really related to the soul, then his cultivation realm would remain at the peak of the saint realm without a breakthrough. He would not be able to break through to the Great Sage realm. Hopefully, there are some treasures in the depths of Soul-Devouring Island that can improve the soul. Murong-Yu thought in his heart as he arrived at the place where Ningyu cultivated. The improvement of Gongsun Ningyu's comprehension was huge. At this time, she had already broken through to the 3rd Order Saint realm. Sensing Murong-Yu's arrival, Gongsun Ningyu immediately stopped cultivating, opened her eyes, and stood up. Big brother Murong, I've already broken through 2 small realms. Gongsun Ningyu said excitedly. This would have been impossible for her in the past. If she wanted to break through to her current realm, it would take a very long time. Because she could not improve her comprehension, she did not have so many saint crystals to squander. Continue. Try to improve your cultivation as much as possible. Murong-Yu nodded slightly. I feel that I can't continue to break through in a short period of time. Big brother Murong, are we still going deeper into Soul-Devouring Island? Gongsun Ningyu ran over and hugged Murong-Yu's arm, looking up at Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu nodded slightly, and then the two appeared on Soul-Devouring Island. Soul-Devouring Island was very dangerous. If it were Zhao Jiqing and the others, Murong-Yu would never allow them to come out. However, Gongsun Ningyu was different, because she was a soul becoming saint. In this mysterious soul-devouring island, she might have a fortuitous encounter. Therefore, Murong-Yu would not deprive her of the opportunity to have a fortuitous encounter. The two continued to go deeper, but their speed was getting slower and slower. Because the feeling of soul-devouring was getting stronger and stronger, even they felt that it was strenuous. Big brother Murong, I seem to feel that my soul is improving. Do you feel the same? On this day, Gongsun Ningyu suddenly asked Murong-Yu excitedly. Murong-Yu nodded slightly. In fact, he had noticed it long ago. At the same time, when he broke through to the 9th Order Sage realm, his soul had also recovered to its peak state. In the constant battle with the soul-devouring power of Soul-Devouring Island, his soul was slowly improving. Big brother Murong, do you think there are treasures for soul cultivation in the depths of Soul-Devouring Island? If we get it, we can cultivate our souls. Gongsun Ningyu was very excited and chattered beside Murong-Yu. Let's hope so. Murong-Yu did not have much hope. After all, even if there were treasures inside, it was still a problem whether they could get close. Even if they could get close, they might not be able to get the treasures. Streams of soul-devouring energy bombarded Murong-Yu's soul, causing his soul to tremble uncontrollably. In order to prevent his soul from being injured, Murong-Yu could only spit out soul fire of primal chaos to block the soul attacks. The stronger the soul attacks, the the more Murong Yu's soul fire of primal chaos was consumed. A few days later, the pale Gong Sun Ning Yu stopped moving forward and said with difficulty, "Big brother Murong, I can't take it anymore." "Then enter my treasure space first." Murong Yu frowned slightly and was about to put Gong Sun Ning Yu into the Hichu Luo Shu. But Gong Sun Ning Yu shook her head and refused. "No, big brother Murong, I want to cultivate here. I want to improve my soul realm." Murong Yu did not answer immediately and thought for a moment. They were already at the center of soul-devouring island. Aside from them, ordinary saints, even imperishable saints, would not be able to come here. Their souls were not as strong as theirs. In other words, it was safe for Gong Sun Ning Yu to cultivate here. Okay, but don't force yourself too much. If you can't take it, retreat immediately, Murong Yu ordered. As they went deeper, their souls became stronger. Although Gong Sun Ning Yu had reached her limit, she only needed to take a few steps back, and she would reach her limit. Then, the soul attacks here would not be a threat to her, and she would be able to recover her soul. Gong Sun Ning Yu quickly nodded. "I will. Big brother Murong, you have to be careful too." Murong Yu nodded and walked deeper into the island. Seeing Murong Yu's back disappear, Gong Sun Ning Yu's face dimmed. "I really am a burden to big brother Murong. I need to get stronger quickly so that I won't be a burden to big brother Murong." As she spoke, she sat down cross-legged and began cultivating. Murong Yu had indeed slowed down because of Gong Sun Ning Yu. At this time, he ran wildly and finally stopped when he was far away from Gong Sun Ning Yu. This was already the limit of what he could endure. Put death on the ground and fight to live, break, and rebuild. Murong Yu also sat down cross-legged and began cultivating. While Murong Yu was cultivating, he didn't know that many experts on the soul-devouring island were also approaching the center of the island. Then, each of them stopped advancing within the limits of their endurance and began to cultivate. At the same time, more people were coming to Soul-Devouring Island. Their goal was to cultivate their souls on Soul-Devouring Island. Even if they could not mutate their souls, they could make their souls stronger. Only a strong soul would give them a chance to fight back when they encountered a soul saint. Otherwise, no matter how strong they were, as long as they were attacked by a soul saint, their souls would not be able to withstand a single blow. In reality, many of the people who entered the vast sea secret realm came for the soul-devouring island to cultivate their souls. Chapter 1248. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of power passed through Murong Yu's body like stormy waves. They didn't cause any harm to his body as they rushed into his spiritual space and frantically tried to strangle his soul. Murong Yu's soul was like a lone boat in the middle of a stormy sea. It was being attacked so violently that it could be torn apart at any time. The flame of primal chaos was getting dimmer and dimmer. Murong Yu's soul was being attacked by the soul-devouring island's soul-devouring power. His soul was in excruciating pain. However, his soul was not severely injured. Although there were some minor injuries, they were insignificant. Murong Yu gritted his teeth and persevered. This was the only way for him to improve his soul cultivation at this stage. He had to do it this way. Otherwise, he could forget about improving his cultivation level. While his soul was in great danger, part of Murong Yu's mind was thinking about the power of life. Hichu, are you saying that the power of life really has no effect on the soul? Murong Yu planned to use the power of life to repair his soul. However, the effect was negligible. I don't know anything about the soul, whether or not the power of life can repair the soul. Theoretically, it should be possible. After all, the tree of life is the most magical tree in the world. The power of life can heal everything. Everything is formed by the power of primal chaos. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. Of course, he knew this. However, how could it be repaired? The soul and physical strength are formed by the power of primal chaos. Theoretically, the power of life that is formed from the power of primal chaos can repair them. However, the soul and physical body are in a completely different form. Murong Yu thought to himself. Murong Yu seemed to have grasped onto something, but he didn't know what it was. Moronyu seemed to have grasped something, but he didn't know what it was. Then, does that mean I can restore my soul by imitating my life force into a spiritual state? Therefore, he continued to refine his soul and study the power of life at the same time. Morongyu's limits continued to rise as he went deeper and deeper. On this day, he stepped out of the limits of what he could bear at his current stage. Suddenly, a violent power of soul-devouring came over. With a chi sound, Morongyu's soul was shattered into thousands of pieces. Morongyu was shocked. His body involuntarily retreated. At the same time, the power of life rushed into his soul like a torrent. Then, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded happened. Under the power of life, Morongyu's soul was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than an hour, his shattered soul had already recovered to its peak state. What's going on? Morongyu was stunned as he hurriedly observed the life force. At this moment, the life force was slightly different from the usual life force. The power of life was still strong, but its form had become illusory. It was like a soul form. Morongyu was overjoyed. He quickly sat cross-legged on the ground and began to study the power of life in this form. After an unknown amount of time, Morongyu suddenly stood up and let out a long roar. His voice was like a dragon's roar. It covered the entire soul-devouring island and was filled with endless joy. F***CK, that's the idiot? Why is he yelling here? Many people on Soul-Devouring Island were using the power of soul-devouring to cultivate Morongyu. However, they were suddenly awakened by Morongyu's roar. Then, they started to curse. Could it be that someone obtained some kind of treasure? Why is he so excited? Some people's hearts were stirred as they searched for Morongyu's location. However, they soon gave up on the idea. This was because Morongyu's voice came from the depths of Soul-Devouring Island. There was no way they could go deep into that area. Gongsun Ningyu was excited. Did Big Brother Morong get something good? It's best if Big Brother Morong gets all the treasures here. Gongsun Ningyu was the only girl who was truly happy for Morongyu. Morongyu's face darkened when he heard the curses of a few people. Thus, he retracted his whistle. However, he could not hide the excitement on his face. The power of life in the form of a soul. Morongyu laughed in his heart. He immediately strode towards the center of Soul-Devouring Island. Rumble. Waves of terrifying power of soul-devouring came at him. Morongyu's soul was constantly being torn apart. However, Morongyu had already converted all the power of life into a soul form. He was frantically repairing his torn soul. Tear it apart and repair it. These two processes were constantly repeated. The pain of his soul being torn apart was indescribable. However, this pain was still within the range that Morongyu could endure. Although he was grimacing in pain and his face was pale, but he was still duty-bound and courageously moved forward. However, even though the power of life was strong, there was a limit to it. When he reached a limit, the power of life's healing ability could not compare to the rate at which his soul was being destroyed. Thus, Morongyu stopped, took a few steps back, and sat down cross-legged. Cultivate. The way his soul was constantly being torn apart and then repaired was the same as how he tempered his body. After the destruction and reconstruction, his soul would be a little stronger than before. As this cycle continued, Morongyu's soul became stronger and stronger. Then, he continued forward. He continued forward until he reached his limit. Then he sat down and cultivated. Just like that, Morongyu approached the center of soul-devouring island step by step. A few decades had already passed. Even though Morongyu's soul was constantly increasing in rank, he did not know how to classify souls. Therefore, Morongyu did not know what rank his soul had reached. However, he could vaguely feel that his soul's rank was comparable to his cultivation realm. They should be on par. On this day, Morongyu arrived outside an incomparably huge valley. Morongyu looked at the valley in front of him with a serious expression. This was because he could feel that the power of soul-devouring was emanating from this valley. It was spreading in all directions. It should be a treasure that's emitting the power of soul devouring. Morong Yu is basically certain now. His current goal was to find that treasure and take it away. Therefore, Morong Yu stared at the violent power of soul devouring and slowly walked into the valley. It was not that he did not want to walk faster. In fact, the power of soul devouring was just too violent. Every 3 steps, Morong Yu would sit cross-legged on the ground and cultivate. Therefore, when Morong Yu spent another few decades walking into the depths of the valley, his soul had already reached its peak. He could feel that he only needed an opportunity for his soul to break through. Suddenly, Morong Yu stopped in his tracks. 2 terrifying lights burst out from his eyes as he looked in front of him. Not far in front of him, a pitch-black bead about the size of a fist was suspended in the air, bobbing up and down. The pearl did not have any special color. It was just like a black pearl. However, waves of energy that made Morong Yu's soul tremble constantly emitted from the pearl. It was the power of soul devouring. The power of soul devouring that covered the entire soul devouring island was emitted by this ordinary-looking pearl. However, what surprised Morong Yu was that he did not see any strong light coming from the pearl. It was just the light of a lower-grade sacred artifact. Morong Yu could not help but wonder if he could not see the light of a soul-sacred artifact with his ability to see the light of a soul-sacred artifact. Or was it that the power of a soul-sacred artifact was not strong enough? Looking down, Morong Yu saw a demonic beast about the size of a calf. Its entire body was illusory and somewhat unreal. It was crawling on the ground with its head raised. It was swallowing the power of soul, devouring from the black pearl. Morong Yu was shocked. This was because a considerable portion of the power of soul devouring from the pearl had been swallowed by this seemingly illusory, demonic beast. Otherwise, the power of soul devouring that covered the island would be much stronger. It would be many times stronger than it was now. Soul devouring pearl. Soul devouring beast. Suddenly, Hichu, who had been quiet all these years, cried out in surprise. "Young master, you have to get at least one of the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast. You have to get both of them. These treasures of heaven and earth actually appeared in the secret realm of the vast sea." "Young master, this is definitely a great opportunity for you." Hichu appeared beside Morong Yu. His eyes shone as he looked at the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast. "Is it really that amazing?" Morong Yu was stunned by Hichu's words. The soul-devouring pearl is a sacred artifact that is most suitable for a soul saint. If you get the soul-devouring pearl, your soul attack will be equivalent to 1 + 1 is greater than 2. The soul-devouring pearl can fully unleash the power of the soul, and the soul-devouring beast is a demonic beast that was born with the soul-devouring pearl. It has extremely terrifying soul attack abilities. And do you see that? The body of the soul-devouring beast is illusory. It can transform into any form. It definitely has an unexpected effect when attacking. After hearing Hichu's words, Morong Yu's heart was burning with excitement. In fact, compared to the soul-devouring beast, he was more inclined towards the soul-devouring pearl. Of course, if he could get both of them, it would be a happy ending. "Hichu, do you have a way to subdue the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast?" Morong Yu asked eagerly. "No, but from what I know, if you don't provoke the soul-devouring beast, it won't take the initiative to attack. And once the soul-devouring beast attacks, you'll have to pray for your own good," Hichu said indifferently. Morong Yu rolled his eyes. As long as he took the soul-devouring pearl, he would provoke the soul-devouring beast. At that time, he would be attacked by both the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast. Chapter 1249. Morong Yu stood not far away from the soul-devouring pearl, quietly watching the soul-devouring beast and the soul-devouring pearl. Just as Hichu had said, as long as one did not provoke the soul-devouring beast, the soul-devouring beast would not attack. Therefore, although the soul-devouring beast had already discovered Morong Yu's existence, it did not even look at Morong Yu. Instead, it greedily absorbed the soul-devouring power emitted by the soul-devouring pearl. At this moment, Muronyu was thinking about how to subdue the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring beast. Unlike ordinary sacred weapons, if one wanted to subdue the soul-devouring pearl, not only did they have to recognize it as their master, they also had to integrate it into their soul. As for how to integrate the soul, that was a matter for later. What Muronyu needed to do now was to get his hands on it. Should I use the Hichu Luoshu to take them all? After much thought, Muronyu could only think of this method. After pondering for a while, he finally took out the Hichu Luoshu. Whoosh! The Hitu and the Luoshu expanded with the wind, covering the huge valley in an instant. Roar! Almost at the same time that the Hichu Luoshu was taken out, the soul-devouring beast seemed to sense the impending danger. It immediately roared angrily. Kacha! The roar was heard, and even though Muronyu was ready, his soul exploded in an instant. Almost instantly, they were annihilated by Yan. Muronyu was immediately taken aback. His life force immediately annihilated the entire soul space and began to rapidly repair the shattered soul. The soul-devouring beast's roar was definitely not just targeted at Muronyu. After destroying Muronyu's soul, its roar continued to spread in all directions like a storm. Puff, puff, puff. In just a few moments, the souls of all the saints on Soul-Devouring Island had been attacked to varying degrees. Some of their souls were even destroyed, and they died an unnatural death. These people didn't even know who killed them until they died. Other than these unlucky souls, everyone on the Soul-Devouring Island had their souls injured. Some were severely injured, while others only suffered minor injuries. While these people's souls were being injured, the soul-devouring beast had already stopped devouring the power of the soul-devouring beast. Instead, it turned its head and glared at Muronyu with an ominous glint in its eyes. A portion of the soul-devouring orb's power had been devoured by the soul-devouring beast. When the soul-devouring beast stopped devouring the soul-devouring power, the soul-devouring power immediately spread throughout the entire soul-devouring island. Suddenly, the soul-devouring power on Soul-Devouring Island increased by several times, perhaps even more. Originally, the souls of the people on the Soul-Devouring Island were already injured. At this moment, he suddenly felt an even more intense soul-devouring power. Suddenly, thump, plop. A large number of people's souls were immediately annihilated. They lost all signs of life and fell stiffly to the ground. Moreover, more and more souls were being destroyed, and more people were dying. Even Gongsun Ningyu, whose soul had also become a saint, could not hold on any longer. Her figure flickered as she retreated. However, her soul had become a saint in the end, and it was much stronger than the others. After retreating for a short distance, she stopped. However, she looked worriedly at the center of the soul-devouring island and muttered to herself, "Big brother Muronyu, please don't let anything happen to you." Then, would anything happen to Muronyu? Murongyu's situation was very serious. At this moment, the soul-devouring beast was glaring at Muronyu with an ominous glint in its eyes. Waves of soul pressure constantly emanated from its body, combined with the soul-devouring power that was several times stronger than before. Murongyu's soul was rapidly being destroyed. In just an instant, the speed at which Murongyu's soul was being destroyed exceeded the speed at which his life force could repair it. Thus, Murongyu's figure flashed, and he charged into the Hichu Luoshu world. Whoosh! The moment he entered the Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu saw a phantom appear in front of him. When he took a closer look, he was taken aback. The soul-devouring beast was standing not far in front of him with a murderous aura. It was glaring at him with murderous intent. Muronyu was really shocked. He had directly teleported into the Hichu Luoshu. His speed was extremely fast. He did not expect the soul-devouring beast to be able to follow him silently. However, despite the shock, Muronyu was laughing in his heart. He was worried about how to bring the soul-devouring beast in, but now he did not have to worry about it. Roar! While Murong Yu was secretly feeling happy, the soul-devouring beast suddenly roared. Then, like a piece of crystal, Murong Yu's soul shattered once more. Suppress. Murong Yu could no longer maintain his composure. He was almost killed in the Hichu Luoshu world. He had lost a lot of face. Therefore, he controlled the Hichu Luoshu world's laws and began to suppress the soul-devouring beast. Although the soul-devouring beast did not have a physical existence, as long as it entered the Hichu Luoshu, it would be restrained by the Hichu Luoshu. Suddenly, an incomparably vast force suppressed the soul-devouring beast. The soul-devouring beast roared again and again, but Murong Yu had already retreated far away. Its roar had no effect on Murong Yu. It was suppressed directly. Although it roared again and again, it would definitely not be able to escape Murong Yu's suppression. It was sending itself to Murong Yu's door. This was Murong Yu's thought. However, not long after this thought appeared, he saw the soul-devouring beast that was suppressed on the ground and unable to get up suddenly twisting violently. Then, it turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. What's going on? Murong Yu was instantly shocked. This was because he realized that the soul-devouring beast had already left the Hichu Luoshu. Even the Hichu Luoshu could not suppress this soul-devouring beast. While he was shocked, the Hichu Luoshu had already swept the soul-devouring orb in. Even the Hichu Luoshu can't suppress it. Even if I keep the soul-devouring beast in the Hichu Luoshu, it won't do me any good. I can't subdue it either. Murong Yu thought for a while and decided to let the soul-devouring beast go for now. After all, he could not suppress it. Moreover, the soul-devouring beast's strength was too terrifying. It could kill Murong Yu at any time. However, just as Murong Yu was about to leave, the soul-devouring beast silently appeared in the Hichu Luoshu near the soul-devouring orb. Murong Yu frowned slightly. With a thought, he moved the soul-devouring beast out. However, in the next moment, the soul-devouring beast silently entered the Hichu Luoshu again. No matter how Murong Yu tried to stop it, he could not stop it from entering. Murong Yu himself could ignore any formations and restrictions. He could come and go freely in powerful formations and restrictions. However, he did not have the ability to enter treasures like this. This soul-devouring beast was much more powerful than Murong Yu's ability. It could simply travel freely. Moreover, what made Murong Yu's balls hurt the most was that this soul-devouring beast would entrench itself near the soul-devouring orb every time it entered. This made it impossible for Murong Yu to fuse with the soul-devouring orb. Whoosh! With a thought, Murong Yu kicked the soul-devouring beast out of the Hichu Luoshu again. At the same time, Murong Yu activated the teleportation and directly left the place, appearing beside Gongsun Ningyu. Gongsun Ningyu had a teleportation point on her body. Seeing Murong Yu suddenly appear, Gongsun Ningyu was overjoyed. "Big brother Murong, are you all right?" Murong Yu nodded slightly. "I'm fine. Let's enter my treasure space first." Murong Yu planned to fuse with the soul-devouring orb on the soul-devouring island. Otherwise, with his current strength, he was still too weak. Any random undead realm expert could easily kill him. "Big brother Murong, did you obtain any treasures?" Murong Yu smiled faintly and briefly explained the matter of the soul-devouring orb. Gongsun Ningyu was surprised at first, but then she was sincerely happy for Murong Yu. As for whether or not she was jealous, that was absolutely not the case. We will be staying on the soul-devouring island for a while. You can use the resources here to cultivate. However, don't get too close to the soul-devouring orb. Murong Yu instructed and then left. He was ready to fuse with the soul-devouring orb. Under Hichu Luoshu's suppression, the soul-devouring orb's power had been suppressed to an extremely small extent. Murong Yu could even play with the soul-devouring orb in his hands. However, once he wanted to fuse with the soul-devouring orb, his soul would directly come into contact with the orb. This was something that even Hichu Luoshu could not suppress. Just as Murong was thinking about how to fuse with the soul-devouring orb, he suddenly frowned. In the next moment, a phantom appeared in front of him. Soul-devouring beast. The soul-devouring beast had caught up. However, the moment the soul-devouring beast appeared, Hichu Luoshu had already suppressed it. Otherwise, if it roared, Murong-Yu's soul would shatter again. Murong-Yu suddenly felt a headache coming on. Although he could suppress the soul-devouring beast at any time, the soul-devouring beast could also leave Hichu Luoshu at any time. When it was suppressed in Hichu Luoshu, the soul-devouring beast could not pose a threat to Murong-Yu. However, once it could leave Hichu Luoshu at any time and enter again. If he had shouted at the top of his lungs the moment he entered, Murong-Yu would have suffered a tragic fate. Only by completely suppressing the soul-devouring beast could Murong-Yu be at ease and fuse with the soul-devouring orb. However, how could he suppress it? Soul-devouring beast, right? Don't be in a hurry to kill me. Why don't we talk about the terms? Murong-Yu could not think of a way to completely suppress the soul-devouring beast. Hence, he prepared to negotiate with the soul-devouring beast. The soul-devouring orb can make you stronger. However, the current soul-devouring orb is unable to unleash its full power. Hence, no matter how strong you are, there is a limit. However, if I can fuse with the soul-devouring orb, I can unleash even more power from the soul-devouring orb. I can even unleash the full power of the soul-devouring orb. At that time, your strength will also rise. Hence, let's discuss. You let me fuse with the soul-devouring orb, and I'll let you follow by my side in the future. How about that? I guarantee that you'll live a good life. Murong-Yu looked at the soul-devouring beast and put on a face that he thought was very amiable as he spoke with a smile. Chapter 1250. The soul-devouring beast only looked at Murong-Yu indifferently, as if it was looking at an idiot. However, it did not roar anymore. But he didn't know if he understood or not. Soul-devouring beast, think about it. Isn't this great? The more powerful the soul-devouring pearl is, the more powerful you will be. Moreover, you can even go to the holy world and not be limited to this vast sea secret realm without any freedom. Murong-Yu did not care whether the soul-devouring beast could understand him or not. He just chose to say some nice words. He had to trick the soul-devouring beast first. Otherwise, he really did not know if he could unleash the full power of the soul-devouring pearl. However, Murong-Yu's trick was really effective. At this moment, the soul-devouring beast was staring at Murong-Yu in a daze and actually moved a little. Murong-Yu rejoiced when he saw this. He felt that there was hope. Therefore, he continued to trick it. Perhaps it was because the soul-devouring beast was simple-minded. Or perhaps it was because Murong-Yu's ability to trick was really unparalleled. After half a day, the soul-devouring beast's gaze towards him was already rather gentle. Moreover, even if Murong-Yu no longer suppressed it, it would not be fierce towards Murong-Yu. Soul-devouring beast, I want to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl now. You don't have any objections, right? Murong-Yu came in front of the soul-devouring beast and looked into its eyes and said in a deep voice, "Oh." The soul-devouring beast growled, then nodded directly at Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu was instantly overjoyed and grabbed the soul-devouring pearl again. However, he still had no way to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl, so he could only stare at it in a daze. Similarly, although Hichu knew the origin of the soul-devouring pearl, he did not know how to refine it. Therefore, he did not have any suggestions for Murong-Yu. The soul-devouring beast was lying on the ground not far away from Murong-Yu. It sized up Murong-Yu with curious eyes, not knowing what Murong-Yu wanted to do. After a long time, Murong-Yu just stared at the soul-devouring pearl in a daze. The soul-devouring beast suddenly stood up as if it was getting impatient. Then, it opened its bloody mouth wide. Murong-Yu was shocked. He thought that the soul-devouring beast was going to roar again. If it were to roar, Murong-Yu's soul would shatter once again. Although it wasn't to the point of death, who would want to experience the pain of having their soul shattered. With a thought, he wanted to suppress the soul-devouring beast. However, just as he was about to suppress it, Muron saw the soul-devouring beast spit out an illusory black light from its mouth. It was not a roar. Muron's heart skipped a beat as he stopped suppressing the soul-devouring beast. He wanted to see what the soul-devouring beast was up to. At first, the black light was only the size of an adult's fist. However, after leaving the soul-devouring beast's bloody mouth, it quickly enlarged. In the end, it completely exceeded the size of Muron's body. It quickly engulfed Muron. Muron's face was filled with suspicion, but he didn't try to resist. In Hichu Luoshu, he still had the ability to protect himself. Most importantly, he could not feel the soul-devouring beast's killing intent. With a pu sound, the black light spat out by the soul-devouring beast immediately enveloped Muron's entire body. Then it quickly drilled into Muron's 1,080,000,000 pores on his body. What's going on? Muron was suspicious. He did not stop the black light from entering his body. He only watched as the black light entered his body and rapidly shot into his soul space like a flood. Soon, all the black light entered his soul space and recondensed into a black light the size of a fist. Then, it shot towards Muron's soul. This time, Muron could no longer remain calm. He quickly stopped the black light from advancing towards his soul. The black light could travel freely in his body. Even if his physical body was destroyed, he could still recondense it. However, if his soul was destroyed, Muron would really die. Roar! 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 Seeing that the black light was stopped, the soul-devouring beast immediately roared. However, there was no killing intent. There was only anxiety. In the end, the soul-devouring beast even walked around Muron while roaring. Looking at its anxious appearance, it seemed to be saying something. Unfortunately, it did not even have the most basic spiritual communication. However, looking at it, it seemed like it wanted to slap Muron to death. You're telling me not to stop that black light? After a while, Muron finally understood the soul-devouring beast's reaction. Hearing this, the soul-devouring beast suddenly stopped in its tracks. It looked at Muron and nodded continuously with a gratified expression. It seemed to be gratified that Muron understood it. Seeing the soul-devouring beast's meaning, Muron's face immediately darkened. Are you trying to kill me? Muron said with a black face. The soul-devouring beast quickly shook its head like a rattle drum and denied it. This black light will help me fuse with the soul-devouring pearl. Muron thought for a while and asked again. The soul-devouring beast nodded repeatedly. However, Muron was still skeptical. No one would believe the soul-devouring beast's words so easily. Soul-devouring beast, what if you're lying to me? The soul-devouring beast shook its head crazily again and looked at Muron with disdain. It seemed to be saying, if I want to harm you, do I need to go through so much trouble? Muron's face darkened even more. He continued, listen carefully. If you do anything to me, then you can stay in the vast sea secret realm by yourself. I will never take you out. The soul-devouring beast immediately nodded and squatted on the ground. It looked at Muron with a face full of anticipation. Muron took a deep breath and released the suppression of the black light. Instantly, the black light rushed into his soul with a whoosh. Then, there was no more then, there was nothing strange. Muron rolled his eyes. Just as he was about to scold the soul-devouring beast, his expression changed slightly, because just now he actually felt the soul-devouring beast's thoughts. Also, the soul-devouring pearl in his hand did not seem to resist him like before. In fact, Muron even felt a sense of familiarity with the soul-devouring pearl. This is soul control. No, this is a contract. Muron's expression changed drastically. Now, his relationship with the soul-devouring beast was very subtle. To him, the soul-devouring beast was like those powerhouses whose souls were controlled by him. However, there were some differences. because Murong Yu felt that he and the soul-devouring beast were equal existences. He could see everything about the soul-devouring beast, and everything about him was in the soul-devouring beast's eyes. He was the soul-devouring beast, and the soul-devouring beast was him. The two of them were one, but they were two completely different individuals. Murong Yu knew that this relationship was called an equal contract. Any life form could form such a contract. Of course, the prerequisite was that both parties were willing. Because if both parties were not willing, there was a possibility of both parties dying if they were not careful during the process. Murong Yu was shocked. He did not know why the soul-devouring beast would take the initiative to form a contract with him. Could it be that even the soul-devouring beast was subdued by his charm? However, this was just a thought. Murong Yu was not narcissistic to this extent. "Why did you form a contract with me?" Murong Yu asked. "Because you can make me stronger," the soul-devouring beast said directly. After both parties signed a contract, they could communicate directly. "Just that? How can you be so sure?" Murong Yu was a little confused. "Just that. Because you give me the feeling that you can make me stronger," the soul-devouring beast said. Murong Yu did not ask anymore. The soul-devouring beast's mind was simple. No matter how much he asked, he would not be able to get anything out of it. With a thought, Murong Yu released the suppression on the soul-devouring pearl. Suddenly, an enormous soul-devouring power spread throughout the entire Hichu Luoshu. The soul-devouring power of the soul-devouring pearl was no longer a threat to Murong Yu's soul. Moreover, he even felt very close to the soul-devouring power. After forming an equal contract with the soul-devouring beast, he had already shared a part of the soul-devouring beast skills. At this moment, he could even directly absorb the soul-devouring pearl's ability to improve his soul realm. This was because the soul-devouring beast also cultivated in this way. Soul-devouring beast, you stay aside first. I'm going to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl. Murong Yu ordered the soul-devouring beast to retreat. Then, he directly swallowed the soul-devouring pearl into his soul space. However, being able to devour the soul-devouring power did not mean that he could fuse with the soul-devouring pearl. Although the soul-devouring pearl did not have an artifact spirit, when it realized that Murong Yu was going to fuse with it, it violently resisted. All of a sudden, streams of terrifying soul-devouring power burst out continuously. It swept through the entire Hichu Luoshu. Gongsun Ningyu, who was cultivating in the distance, suddenly stood up with a pale face. Her soul was on the verge of exploding from the impact of the soul-devouring power that was like a stormy sea. "Ningyu, go to the soul-devouring island first." Murong Yu was worried that Ningyu would be hurt, so he moved her out of the Hichu Luoshu world. However, he still placed a trace of his consciousness on Ningyu to prevent anyone from harming her. Fuse. Refine. In the following time, Murong Yu began to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl with all his might. However, the soul-devouring pearl was extremely uncooperative. It was like a wild horse that constantly resisted. If not for Murong Yu being able to suppress it in the Hichu Luoshu, the soul-devouring pearl would have escaped long ago. Bang! Murong Yu's soul was shattered once again. A burst of life force surged and quickly restored his soul. However, Murong Yu was a little angry at this moment. Even though he had formed a contract with the soul-devouring beast, and the soul-devouring pearl's power was weakened by 1,000,000 times, he still could not resist the soul-devouring pearl's berserk power. Yes, berserk. As Murong Yu kept trying to fuse with it, the soul-devouring pearl became more and more berserk. Soul-devouring pearl, lend me a hand. Murong Yu finally could not remain calm. He directly called for the soul-devouring beast to attack together. The soul-devouring beast let out a roar. Its body flashed and turned into a stream of light. It directly disappeared into Murong Yu's forehead. When it reappeared, it had already entered Murong Yu's soul space. Then, it let out an earth-shattering roar, causing Murong Yu's soul space to tremble violently. His soul was nearly torn apart. Chapter 1251. Murong Yu's body shook violently, and he almost could not help but slap the soul-devouring beast. Although this fellow had entered to help, it did not know its place. It almost shattered Murong Yu's soul. Perhaps it sensed Murong Yu's thoughts. The soul-devouring beast's roar stopped abruptly, and it smiled embarrassedly. Then, it turned into a ray of light and charged towards the soul-devouring pearl that was entangled with Murong Yu's soul. Roar! After another low roar, the soul-devouring beast spat out a ray of black light that wrapped around the soul-devouring pearl. Then, Murong Yu realized that the soul-devouring pearl, which had been constantly raging, had gradually quietened down. In reality, it had not quieted down, but was suppressed by the soul-devouring beast. Murong Yu looked at the soul-devouring beast with a surprised gaze. This fellow was born with the soul-devouring pearl, and actually had the ability to suppress the soul-devouring pearl. However, it was obvious that Murong Yu had overestimated the soul-devouring beast. At this moment, the soul-devouring beast looked like it was forcing itself, and its expression was even more ferocious. "Hurry up, I can't hold on for long." The soul-devouring beast communicated with Murong Yu. Murong Yu did not say anything, and only took the opportunity to fuse with it. However, even if the soul-devouring pearl was being suppressed twice, Murong Yu could not fuse with it immediately. This made him depressed. Obviously, he did not grasp the method to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl. The level of your soul is too low. You can't fuse with the soul-devouring pearl at all. Seeing Murong Yu's frantic efforts to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl to no avail, the soul-devouring beast took the initiative to communicate with Murong Yu. "What level do I need to break through to?" Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he asked. "You need to reach at least a 1-star soul to be able to fuse with the soul-devouring pearl. You are still far from a 1-star soul," the soul-devouring beast said bluntly. Murong Yu rolled his eyes and signaled the soul-devouring beast to continue. In the holy world, there are only 9 levels of soul sanctification. From the lowest to the highest level is 1-star to 9-star. 1-star was the lowest realm for a soul saint. However, it is still equivalent to the great sage realm of an ordinary sage. Murong Yu nodded. Only then did he realize something. The reason his strength couldn't break through to the great sage realm was because his soul hadn't broken through to the 1-star realm, right? If he broke through to a 1-star soul spirit, then he would naturally be able to break through. However, a 1-star soul was equivalent to the great sage realm. One could imagine how powerful a soul saint was. Then for now, I can only cultivate my soul. Murong Yu was a little speechless. After pondering for a moment, he signaled the soul-devouring beast to stop suppressing the soul-devouring orb. After stopping the suppression, the soul-devouring orb released a powerful force that covered the entire Hichu Luoshu. Devour. Because he had signed an equal contract with the soul-devouring beast, Murong Yu already had some of the soul-devouring beast's abilities. Directly devouring the soul-devouring beast's power was one of those abilities. While he was devouring the power of the soul-devouring orb, he had already taken Gongsun Ningyu back into the Hichu Luoshu world. Otherwise, he didn't know when he would be able to break through. The soul-devouring beast's ability was really terrifying. Under the direct devouring, Murong Yu found that his soul that had reached the peak was loosening again. There seemed to be signs of a breakthrough. Time continued to pass. Although Murong Yu's soul was slow, it was constantly improving. He didn't know how much time had passed. On this day, Murong Yu's soul suddenly shook, and a soul aura that was more than 10 times stronger than before was released. At the same time as the vibration, his soul emitted streaks of soul chaos fire. He felt that these soul chaos fire were more than 10 times stronger than before. Most importantly, he felt that his soul seemed to have transformed somewhere. According to the soul-devouring beast, Murong Yu's soul had broken through to the 1-star realm. In terms of realm, it was comparable to an ordinary great sage. In terms of true strength, Even an advanced great sage was no match for Murong-yu. This was the terrifying part of a soul saint. Once they broke through, they could defeat ordinary great sages of the same realm. After continuing to devour the soul-devouring orb's soul-devouring power and spending some time to consolidate his cultivation, Murong-yu woke up the sleeping soul-devouring beast. He was going to refine and merge the soul-devouring orb again. You finally broke through? It doesn't seem too slow. Seeing that Murong-yu had broken through, the soul-devouring beast communicated with Murong-yu. Murong-yu's face darkened. You're not much better, are you? It's been so many years. How many stars has your soul reached? Hearing this, the soul-devouring beast was embarrassed. Its soul realm was actually not high. Moreover, after signing a contract with Murong-yu, its soul realm had dropped to 1-star realm. As long as it didn't come into contact with the contract, its realm would be proportional to Murong-yu's soul realm. In other words, if there were no accidents, its soul realm would not be able to surpass Murong-yu's by much. This was because if its soul realm was too high, it would suppress Murong-yu's soul. It would cause Murong-yu's soul to be under extreme pressure, to the point of collapse. Therefore, the heavenly axiom would try to maintain the same realm for those who had signed a contract. At least, it would not surpass the other party by too much. Of course, nothing was absolute in this world. After breaking through to 1-star realm, Murong-yu felt that the soul-devouring orb suppression on him had lessened. Therefore, when he started to refine and merge, the soul-devouring orb, which had not reacted at all at first, started to tremble even more violently. In fact, Murong-yu could even feel a trace of fear coming from the soul-devouring orb. Fear towards Murong-yu. This meant that Murong-yu had the ability to refine it. Refine. Merge. Murong-yu went into seclusion again. The soul-devouring orb was indeed one of the most precious treasures in the world. It took Murong-yu a full 100 years to refine it in its initial stages. However, this type of refinement was different from other types of refinement. Normal refinement was to directly refine it and turn it into energy. Murong-yu's refinement was to forcefully make the soul-devouring orb recognize him as its master. He used 100 years to establish a preliminary connection with the soul-devouring orb. Then, the next step was much simpler. He only needed to continuously refine it. Year after year passed. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. Whoosh! After being refined by Murong-yu for a full 1,000 years, the soul-devouring orb did not change at all. However, the soul-devouring ability that could devour heaven and earth was getting weaker and weaker. Murong-yu could not understand this. He even thought that the soul-devouring orb had been destroyed by him. However, the soul-devouring orb said that this was normal. On this day, Murong-yu had refined the soul-devouring orb until there was not a trace of soul-devouring power left. Merge! At this point, Murong-yu could not care less about the soul-devouring orb. He roared in his heart, and his entire soul engulfed the soul-devouring orb. Then there was no more. After the soul-devouring orb entered the soul, it disappeared without a trace. It seemed to have completely merged with Murong-yu's soul. Rumble! Suddenly, Murong-yu's soul trembled violently. Streaks of soul-chaotic fire shot out. Kacha! Kacha! Just as Murong-yu's soul spewed out the soul fire of primal chaos, Gongsun Ningyu, who was cultivating nearby, let out a blood-curdling scream and was sent flying. At the same time, her entire soul began to shatter. Why does Big Brother Murong's soul attack have the effect of soul-devouring? It's exactly the same as the soul-devouring orb. Gongsun Ningyu endured the pain of her soul being torn apart. She kept resisting the tearing of the soul-devouring orb while quickly retreating. However, her heart was filled with shock. Murong-yu clearly saw the scene of Gongsun Ningyu being blasted away. He was shocked. Immediately, he suppressed the tremors of his soul. Murong-yu couldn't be bothered to check the changes in his soul. With a flash, he appeared beside Gongsun Ningyu and reached out to grab her. Then, an enormous amount of life force rushed into Gongsun Ningyu's soul space and began to quickly heal Gongsun Ningyu's damaged soul. Seeing that her broken soul was quickly healing under Murong Yu's repair, Gongsun Ningyu could not help but widen her eyes in disbelief. It can actually repair the soul? Soul-devouring orb can be used in soul attacks? Gongsun Ningyu was shocked speechless. After a while, Gongsun Ningyu's damaged soul had been repaired. Big Brother Murong, do you have these abilities after fusing with the soul-devouring orb? Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murong Yu in confusion. Murong Yu smiled. You can say that. I have a breakthrough. I'll go consolidate my cultivation first. After repairing Gongsun Ningyu's soul, Murong Yu left. Generally, the attack method of a soul saint was very simple. It was to use their powerful soul power to directly strangle the opponent's soul. Although the method was simple, it was very terrifying. After fusing with the soul-devouring orb, Murong Yu's soul attack had a second method. Soul-devouring, 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 soul-devouring. Soul strangle was to crush the opponent's soul. Soul-devouring was to directly devour the opponent's soul. Moreover, Murong Yu was surprised to find that when he was devouring Gongsun Ningyu's soul, some of Gongsun Ningyu's soul was actually devoured by him. After devouring a part of Gongsun Ningyu's soul, Murong Yu's soul seemed to have strengthened a little. Although it was very little, did this mean that as long as Murong Yu kept devouring souls, his soul would continue to strengthen? After discovering this fact, Murong Yu was a little shocked. If Murong Yu's self-control was excellent, he would not act recklessly and would only kill his enemy's soul. If he went crazy and kept devouring souls, then he would become cruel and murderous. He would become a bloodthirsty person in order to increase his cultivation level. Soul-devouring was a double-edged sword. It could make Murong Yu stronger, but it could also consign him to eternal damnation. Chapter 1252. A one-star soul had the ability to devour other people's souls. Although Murong Yu was still a ninth-order saint, his true battle prowess had already reached the Great Sage Realm. In fact, he could even sweep through Great Sage Realm saints. Even the saints of the Undead Realm had the power to fight. Murong Yu's soul-devouring ability was absolutely terrifying. Apart from devouring other people's souls and making his own soul stronger, it was also a terrifying killing method. After my soul broke through to 1 star, my cultivation realm should be able to break through to the Great Saint Realm. However, I still need a large amount of items that contain a large amount of power. Murong Yu thought in his heart, and left Hichu, Luoshu with a thought. Big Brother Murong, this soul-devouring island no longer has the power to devour souls? Gongsun Ningyu said unhappily. Murong Yu looked at Gongsun Ningyu strangely and asked, "Why are you so gloomy now that you don't have the soul-devouring power? I'm thinking that for so many years, not many people have been able to reach the center of soul-devouring island. Now that there's no power to devour souls, haven't those treasures been taken by others?" Gongsun Ningyu was still unhappy. However, her words made Murong Yu happy. "Little girl, you're too greedy. Those treasures weren't ours in the first place. Now that they've been taken by others, it's their opportunity. What's not ours will never be ours." Murong Yu stroked Gongsun Ningyu's little head and said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. However, Gongsun Ningyu was still a little conflicted, but if Big Brother Murong didn't take away the soul-devouring pearl, they wouldn't have been able to get it. Murong Yu was really speechless. Gongsun Ningyu was usually very obedient. However, once she entered a dead end, it would be difficult to get out. Therefore, he said helplessly, "Ningyu, you're wrong to think like that. If you're like this, we've already gotten the biggest benefit, haven't we? We've obtained the soul-devouring pearl and the soul-devouring pearl. Even if you add everything else together, it's still far from the soul-devouring pearl. Is that really the case?" Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murong Yu, her large eyes flashing with confusion. "That must be the case. Nothing can compare to the soul-devouring pearl," Murong Yu said with certainty. In the end, Gongsun Ningyu nodded and felt relieved. Then they walked out of the island. Kaka, 2 little ants. Yeah, there was actually a woman, although it was not mature yet. However, they could still be harvested. I've been bored to death in the vast sea secret realm all these years. Before Murong Yu and Lu Li could reach the seaside, a group of people blocked their path. All of them looked at Murong Yu and Lu Li with malicious intent. One of them even sized up Gongsun Ningyu from head to toe. His eyes were naked, obscene, and his face revealed a lewd smile. That gaze made Gongsun Ningyu very uncomfortable, as she directly hid behind Murong Yu. It's just two saints. They shouldn't have anything good on them. I'm too lazy to kill them, a black-clothed youth said with a slight frown. Is Old Third's brain filled with lust? He's interested in that woman, not the treasures they might have on them. Old Third, if you want to solve your physiological problems, hurry up. Don't delay our journey, another said in a deep voice. Old Second knows me best. You guys go first. I'll catch up soon, the wretched Old Third said as he approached Murong Yu. So Old Third is a fast shooter. Ha! Everyone burst into laughter. However, they clearly knew Old Third's character very well. They had already walked away while laughing. They had no interest in staying to watch Old Third's live sex show. From beginning to end, they did not even look at Murong Yu and Lu Li. They completely treated them as air. Kid, get out of my way. After I've enjoyed her, I'll let you enjoy her too. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Old Third walked over and stretched out his big hand to slap Murong Yu, wanting to send him flying. Murong Yu's face was gloomy, and a cold, murderous intent flashed between his eyebrows. Big brother Murong, I hate this person. Help me kill him. Gongsun Ningyu, who was hiding behind Murong Yu, looked at Old Third, who was walking over with a disgusted expression, and said to Murong Yu with some displeasure. Old Third could not help but laugh when he heard that. Even the powerhouses who had not gone far looked over with a surprised expression. They were all powerhouses in the Great Saint realm. That woman actually said that she wanted to kill Old Third? Was she really ignorant? Or did they really have that ability? Just as they were doubting, they saw Murong Yu, who had been gloomy, suddenly show a bright smile on his face. Seeing this sudden change, everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts. However, before they could react, Old Third, who had been laughing heartily, suddenly stopped. Then, under the gaze of others, Old Third fell to the ground with a plop, without any signs of life. He's dead. Third Bro's companions looked at Third Bro in shock. They didn't know why Third Bro would suddenly die. This was because they did not see Murong Yu make a move. While they were shocked, an almost invisible force with almost no power fluctuations quickly shot out from Old Third's soul space, and finally disappeared into Murong Yu's glabella. This was Old Third's soul that was killed, and it was directly devoured by Murong Yu. After obtaining Old Third's soul, Murong Yu saw that his soul was indeed stronger than before. Although it was not obvious, there was an improvement after all. Kill him. At this time, Old Third's companions finally reacted. One of them roared and launched his strongest attack at Murong Yu. In an instant, various colors of holy light filled this part of the world. Frightening auras continued to erupt, shattering the heavens and earth. Like raindrops, they rained down on Murong Yu and Jian Wushuang. Perhaps they had guessed something, or perhaps they simply felt that Murong Yu must have some tricks up his sleeve. Although these people were attacking, they did not come close. All of you can go to hell to accompany your Old Third. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes, and there was a glint in his eyes. The light on these people was black, and they were all black star-level villains. Killing them could be considered as getting rid of evil for the people. Therefore, Murong Yu directly put Gongsun Ningyu into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, his figure swayed, and he took a step forward, disappearing on the spot. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the moment his figure disappeared, those forces came crashing down. They directly razed that area to the ground. However, they could not do anything to Murong Yu. Soul Strangle. Murong Yu teleported and appeared beside these people, and he roared in his heart. Immediately, his soul primal chaos fire shot out from his soul space like a storm. It locked onto those great sages and quickly strangled them. Seeing Murong Yu suddenly appear, but he did not attack, those great sages were puzzled. However, their movements were not slow. However, their movements weren't slow in the slightest. Incomparably berserk energy was blasted out by them as they charged towards Muronyu. However, what made them vomit blood was that when they attacked, Muronyu teleported and disappeared again, running away after attacking. This tactic was the most shameless. Therefore, they could not help but curse and chase after him in a flash. However, they did not think about it. A group of great sages attacked Muronyu, a saint, who was more shameless. If Muronyu did not have a soul attack, wouldn't he be dead? Although Muronyu was fast, their speed was not slow either. If they continued to chase, Muronyu would not be able to survive at all. However, these great sages had just flashed and had not flown out yet. Their hearts were shrouded by an extremely strong sense of danger. Before they could react, they felt a force rushing into their soul space, and, at this moment, it was strangling their souls at an incomparably fast speed. "It's a soul attack!" A great sage roared, and his figure retreated quickly. At the same time, his incomparably powerful force also surged into the soul space to stop the soul primal chaos fire. However, how could it be in time? Poof, poof, poof. The soul primal chaos fire directly destroyed their souls. Suddenly, their souls were directly crushed into billions of pieces like a piece of tofu. However, as a great saint expert, he was still a great saint. Even so, they did not die immediately. Soul devour. Muronyu roared in his heart. Suddenly, the power of the soul-devouring pearl erupted. Under the devouring of the soul-devouring pearl, the shattered soul fragments of those great sages turned into tiny rays of light and blasted toward Muronyu. In the end, all these soul fragments entered Murongyu's soul space and were directly devoured by his soul. Ningyu, collect all of their storage rings. I'll adjust my breath. After releasing Gongsun Ningyu from Hichu Luoshu and instructing her, Muronyu sat down cross-legged on the spot. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as Muronyu sat down, Gongsun Ningyu saw a few bloody lights appear out of thin air and quickly disappeared between Murongyu's eyebrows. Murongyu's face also turned pale. Will Big Brother Murong be okay? Gongsun Ningyu looked at Muronyu with a worried expression, but she still took away all the storage rings of those people according to Murongyu's instructions. Then, what happened to Muronyu? Or those red lights? Didn't Old Third and the others' attacks not even touch the corner of his clothes? In fact, there was a problem with Murongyu's soul. Chapter 1253. Devouring Souls to enhance the strength realm of the soul was similar to refining power in the chaos furnace to enhance the cultivation realm. However, there was also a huge difference. The power refined by the chaos furnace would be purified by the chaos furnace until there was no result, and then enter Murongyu's body to increase his strength. However, the souls that Murongyu devoured were directly devoured. They were not refined, let alone purified. Therefore, the problem now came out. Every person's soul had a lot of information. The stronger a person was, the more experience they had, and the more information they had. At first, when Murongyu devoured a trace of Gongsun Ningyu's soul, because there were very few souls, the amount of information contained was too little, and it did not expose the flaw of devouring souls. It was the same even after devouring the soul of the third brother. However, after he devoured the souls of 5 or 6 people at the same time, and all of them were powerhouses in the great sage realm, this flaw suddenly erupted. After the souls were devoured, they fused into a part of Murongyu's soul. Therefore, the information recorded in these people's souls was directly fused with Murongyu's soul. In an instant, an incomparably large amount of information rushed into Murongyu's soul like a stormy sea. For a while, Murongyu's soul, who was unprepared, was actually confused. It was as if his information, which was originally neat and orderly, had been messed up at this moment. It was extremely messy and mixed with all kinds of information from other people. Although Murong Yu's soul was so huge that it could accommodate the information of these people without exploding. However, if the chaotic memories were not clear, it would make Murong Yu confused. Even in serious cases, Murong Yu did not know which memories were his and which were others, because the souls of others were all refined and integrated by him. Therefore, what Murong Yu had to do now was to erase other people's memories and information from his soul. Because Murong Yu's soul was sage, he was quite familiar with his own soul. Therefore, it was not difficult to erase other people's information and memories. However, it took him a few days. Looks like I'll have to erase their hearts before devouring their souls in the future, especially those who were extremely powerful. And I can't devour too many people's souls at once. Murong Yu stood up and thought to himself. To be honest, this made him feel very depressed. He originally thought that this soul-devouring ability would allow his soul realm to increase rapidly. But now, it didn't seem like it was possible. However, at least he knew how to increase the level of his soul. Big brother Murong, are you okay? Seeing Murong Yu get up, Gong Sun Ningyu, who had been standing guard beside him, hurriedly asked with concern. There was a problem with the soul, but I solved it. All right, it's time for us to leave Soul-Devouring Island. Murong Yu smiled and walked towards the sea. Big brother Murong, these people's storage rings. Gong Sun Ningyu took a few steps forward and handed the storage rings of the people whose souls were destroyed by Murong Yu to Murong Yu. Murong Yu shook his head. Keep these. They're not of much use to me. Gong Sun Ningyu shook her head. Just as she was about to speak, an angry roar came from afar. Like a thunderclap, it shook Murong Yu and Gong Sun Ningyu's eardrums. What a thief! You dare to kill my Blood Rain Mountain's disciples. You're courting death. At the same time the voice came, a sword light had already passed through the endless space and appeared in front of Murong Yu and Gong Sun Ningyu. It locked onto Murong Yu and quickly slashed down. At this moment, Murong Yu's heart was suddenly enveloped by a strong sense of danger. Before he could react, he immediately grabbed Gong Sun Ningyu and took a step forward, disappearing on the spot. Boom! The moment he disappeared, the sword light had already fiercely slashed the ground. A bottomless pit with a radius of tens of thousands of miles appeared on the ground. Chi! Chi! Chi after the first sword light. A sharp sound of breaking through the air was heard again. Then, Murong Yu and Gong Sun Ningyu saw hundreds of millions of sword lights shooting from the front like a storm. The sword lights covered the sky and earth, occupying every inch of the void. Even the air was torn apart and annihilated. At this moment, Gong Sun Ningyu's heart was enveloped by a strong sense of death. Her face was pale, and her eyes were full of fear as she looked at Murong Yu. She asked in a trembling voice, Big brother Murong, what should we do? Murong Yu's face was very gloomy. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his forehead was full of endless killing intent. The offensive power of these sword lights was extremely strong, surpassing that of a ninth-step great saint. It was at least from a first-step undead expert, and these were just sword lights. To be able to slash out such a terrifying sword light, one had to be at least a second-step undead expert. Murong Yu had never faced an expert of this level. If he were to launch a sneak attack, he could use a soul attack to catch the other party off guard. But now, he was the one being attacked, and Murong Yu did not even know where the other party was. Therefore, his soul attack was naturally useless. Retreat. The angelic wings spread out behind Murong Yu's back. Under his crazy flapping, he and Gong Sun Ningyu turned into a stream of light and shot into the distance. However, the streaks of sword light seemed to be attached to the body as they shot over with murderous intent. Even the void seemed to be pierced, and the power was unparalleled. Let's enter the Hichu Luoshu first. Taking advantage of the fact that these sword lights had not yet disturbed the void, Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luoshu with a thought. Although he was fast, he was not faster than these sword lights. Moreover, with Gong Sun Ningyu in his arms, Murong Yu could not teleport at all. If he did not enter the Hichu Luoshu now, he would be stabbed to death by these sword lights. Teleport. The moment he entered the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong activated the teleport. Immediately, the Hichu Luo Shu shot towards one of the teleportation points on Soul Devouring Island. Asterisk Chi Chi. Asterisk the speed of these sword lights was indeed terrifying. The moment Murong entered the Hichu Luo Shu, countless sword lights stabbed into the Hichu Luo Shu. There were even hundreds of sword lights that followed him into He-Tu and Luo Shu. Suppress. Annihilate. To deal with these sword lights entering the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong only needed a thought to easily annihilate them. However, the sword lights crazily bombarding the Hichu Luo Shu were not so easily annihilated. Boom! Just as the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo was about to be transferred, Murong felt as if the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo had been slammed into by an incomparably huge sacred mountain. Oof! The terrifying overflow of damage almost shattered Murong mind, causing him to vomit blood. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Hichu Luo Shu was actually knocked out of the void. The teleportation failed. This was the first time Murong encountered such a situation. However, there was always a first time for everyone. Little bastard, you dare to run after killing my Blood Rain Mountain's disciple. An angry roar sounded, and a monstrous hand stretched out from the void. The huge hand carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, as if it had traveled through countless time and space to reach out from ancient times. It exuded a vast and powerful force, and directly grabbed Hichu Luo Shu, who was forced out of the void. Bang! 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 The huge hand directly enveloped the area of millions of miles around Hichu Luo Shu. This area of the void was directly filled with the power of the huge hand. Then, the huge hand pressed down and fiercely grabbed the void. Suddenly, the air within millions of miles began to explode crazily. A terrifying force crazily squeezed Hichu Luo Shu from all directions. Under the pressure of these terrifying forces, He-Tu and Luo Shu were actually fixed in the void, unable to move at all. In addition, the terrifying overflow of damage was constantly attacking Murong mind, and his mind was about to be crushed. At the same time, a middle-aged man finally came from afar and gradually approached Murong. Presumably, this person should be an undead realm expert from Blood Rain Mountain. At this moment, Murong was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. What did he kill the Blood Rain Mountain's disciples? Could it be those people from the Third Brothers group that he had killed before? Although those people's memories and confidence had been merged by Murong, he did not erase them. However, Murong had erased the information without even reading it. Therefore, he had no idea who these people were. However, the truth was already very obvious. Third Brother and his group were indeed Blood Rain Mountain's disciples. Previously, when Murong was erasing their souls, the red light that entered his body was the blood curse of Blood Rain Mountain. Hichu Luo Shu could not be teleported. Murong tried to teleport to the divine world. However, he still failed. In other words, it was as if he was imprisoned in the void, unable to move. Big Brother Murong, we won't be killed, right? Seeing Murong vomiting blood again and again, Gongsun Ningyu's heart was incomparably alarmed. She asked while wiping the blood from Murong mouth. Murong eyes flickered with a cold light, and his heart was overflowing with killing intent. He had a deeper understanding of the strength of the various realms in the divine world. Compared to the Blood Rain Mountain's expert, that undead realm assassin simply paled in comparison. Put death on the ground and fight to live. When Murong saw the middle-aged expert walking over through Hichu Luo Shu, his heart suddenly surged with an incomparably crazy idea. Soul Devourer, quickly come out. Don't be lazy. Today we're going to kill the undead realm expert. Murong directly transmitted to the Soul Devourer beast that was sleeping in his soul space. Soul attacks were limited by distance. After exceeding the distance, no matter how powerful the soul attack was, it would not be able to do anything to the opponent. The stronger the strength, the longer the distance of the attack. The reason why Murong you could not do anything to the Undead Realm expert was because he did not know where the opponent was. However, it was different now. The opponent had already entered the range of his soul attack. Even if he could not kill the opponent, he could create an opportunity for himself to escape. Chapter 1254. The big hand quickly grabbed down and was about to grab the whole He Tu and Luo Shu in his hand. Perhaps because he knew that Murong you couldn't escape, the middle-aged man took large strides towards He Tu and Luo Shu, completely unguarded. In fact, he really didn't need to be on guard, because Hichu Luo Shu was already imprisoned in the void by him. Moreover, Murong Yu wasn't strong, so how could he overturn the heavens? At this time, Murong Yu already had a large number of burners and chaos saint veins in Hichu Luo Shu. If this continued, with his strength, even if Hichu Luo Shu wasn't suppressed, he would be killed by the overflowing damage. And burning the saint veins could block a part of the overflowing damage, which was better than nothing. Roar! The soul-devouring beast turned into a bright light and rushed out of Murong Yu's soul space, standing in front of Murong Yu and growling. Soul-devouring beast, don't worry. Wait for my order and attack at the same time. Murong Yu comforted the soul-devouring beast, and at the same time watched the undead realm expert through Hichu Luo Shu, who was quickly approaching. However, although the undead realm expert's speed was fast, the speed of his attack was even faster. Before this person arrived, he could stretch out his hand and grab Hitu and Luo Shu in his hand. At that time, it would be difficult for Murong Yu to escape, and he might be killed directly. Therefore, Murong Yu couldn't wait any longer. Soul-devouring beast, attack! Murong Yu fiercely shouted and struggled to open a hole in Hichu Luo Shu. Murong Yu, who was already prepared, and the soul-devouring beast soul attack also shot out at the same time as Hichu Luo Shu opened. Suddenly, the terrifying soul attack directly penetrated the void like a stormy sea and quickly strangled the middle-aged man. Even Gongsun Ningyu made a move. But relatively speaking, Gongsun Ningyu's soul attack was the weakest among the three. However, it was better than nothing. The undead realm powerhouses didn't notice the danger at first. Because soul attacks were soundless, ordinary people's souls would not be able to detect them. Unless the other party was a soul saint, they wouldn't be able to easily sense the fluctuations of soul attacks. However, as powerhouses, their reactions were extremely sensitive. Although he couldn't feel the soul attack's undulations, he still couldn't feel it. But all of a sudden, the heart of the undead realm expert was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of danger. The undead expert's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly became vigilant. At the same time, he came to a halt. However, because he did not feel anything strange, he only increased his strength to protect his body. However, just as he raised the shield, his entire soul started to tremble violently. Waves of fearful consciousness continued to spread out. His soul felt fear. The undead realm expert was shocked. He didn't have time to think about what was going on. He just instinctively retreated. Rumble. Just as he retreated, Murong Yu and the other two soul attacks had already strangled him like a storm. They madly poured into his body and quickly rushed out of his soul space. The undead realm expert was shocked. His figure flickered, and his speed skyrocketed again as he retreated. However, the terrifying soul attack had already poured into his body. Even if his speed was 10 times faster, he couldn't get rid of those soul attacks. However, in the next moment, the undead realm expert did something that left Murong Yu and the others dumbfounded and in awe of him. With a bang, the body under the undead realm expert's head exploded and was directly annihilated. In the end, only his head was left, and he quickly retreated. The soul attack power that was originally attached to the body was also blasted out with the annihilation of the body. When it once again strangled the undead realm expert, it was already a beat slower. The undead realm expert was able to escape quickly. What a pity. If these attacks can enter the opponent's soul, even if he doesn't die, he will lose a layer of skin. Seeing that the attack was ineffective, Murong Yu felt a burst of regret. Roar! The soul-devouring beast let out a dull roar, and its figure flashed and was about to pounce. However, it was stopped by Murong Yu. If it had not signed a contract with him, the soul-devouring beast might have been able to easily kill this undead realm expert. However, after signing a contract with Murong Yu, the soul-devouring beast's strength dropped a lot. At this time, it was definitely not the opponent of the undead realm expert. After all, once the opponent had a defense, as long as the distance between the two sides was pulled apart, the soul-devouring beast's soul attack would be useless no matter how powerful it was. Murong Yu was also a little depressed. If it had not been integrated and refined before the soul-devouring bead, as long as the soul-devouring bead was used, then no matter if the opponent was in the undead realm or the undead realm, his soul would be directly devoured. However, the soul-devouring bead was not strong now and did not have the power it had before. I can kill him. The soul-devouring beast communicated with Murong Yu, unable to hide the anger in its heart. Now it was like a tiger being bullied by a dog. A mere undead realm saint wanted to kill it. It was so angry that it could not calm down. It won't be too late to take revenge after I reach the Great Sage realm. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Murong Yu scolded, and then with a thought, Hichu Luoshu had already teleported away. At the same time that the undead expert was attacked, he also retracted the hand he had stretched out. Although he could not kill the opponent, he could at least get out of the situation. Roar! The soul-devouring beast was still furious and murderous. Big Brother Murong, actually, with our soul attack, we can completely kill that person. It's just that our cultivation realm is not high. Gongsun Ningyu said, somewhat depressed. Murong Yu nodded, but he was also very depressed. If he could reach the Great Sage realm, although there was still a huge gap between his cultivation and the undead realm expert, he could at least resist the attack of the undead realm expert for a short period of time. And it would only take a few breaths of time for his soul attack to severely injure the opponent's soul. As long as the opponent's soul was severely injured, even if the opponent was in the undead realm, they would not be Murong Yu's opponent. In the end, Murong Yu is still too weak. Let's go to the other island immediately. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a terrifying light. Before, he only had a little dispute with the Li family, but now he had a grudge with the Blood Rain Mountain. There were profound, sage-level existences in the Blood Rain Mountain. These high and mighty powerhouses made Murong Yu feel great pressure. He needed to quickly improve his strength. Coming out of Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu walked toward the other side of the soul-devouring island. He did not want to encounter the undead realm expert again. Moreover, Murong Yu's speed was also increased to the extreme. Because of the many blood curses on his body, who knew how many disciples of the Blood Rain Mountain were on the soul-devouring island? Once he encountered them, Murong Yu could easily kill them if they were below the undead realm. However, if he encountered an undead realm expert, it would be a life and death battle. Soul attack. The undead realm expert of the Blood Rain Mountain had recondensed his body after retreating. However, he still retreated a very far distance, for fear that Murong Yu would attack him again. Even so, he still had lingering fear. If it were not for his fast reaction and determination, his soul would have been annihilated. There is actually a soul sage in the White Sun City? Who is it? There is actually such a treasure. Why have I never heard of it? The undead realm expert frowned slightly, but the depths of his eyes flashed with endless light. In the area near the White Sun City, the Blood Rain Mountain was the strongest after the White Sun City. The Blood Rain Mountain was equivalent to the overlord of this area. However, they did not know that there was someone whose soul had become a soul sage. First Order Great Saint, Soul Sage. We must get to the bottom of this matter. The undead realm expert thought for a moment and decided not to pursue Murong Yu. He did not have the intention to continue searching for treasures in the vast sea secret realm. Instead, he left the soul-devouring island on a boat and shot toward the entrance. He had to report this matter as soon as possible. On the other side, Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu also came to the sea. After summoning the Yu Luo's bone ship that they had taken from Wu Bai, they entered the vast sea secret realm and shot towards the other islands in the depths. Almost at the same time, the Li family in the White Sun City was decorated with lanterns and streamers as if they were celebrating a happy occasion. It was indeed a happy occasion, because a super expert of the Li family had returned home in glory. That person was Li Diyu's elder brother, Li Di. Li Di, Li Diyu's elder brother. Because his talent was heaven-defying, he was a genius. Therefore, when he was very young, he was sent by the Li family to a super force in the holy kingdom of Nine, the heavenly slaughter sect, to cultivate. Although he was not much older than Li Diyu, their strength was as different as heaven and earth. Li Diyu was only a great sage, but Li Di had already reached the profound sage realm. An expert of this level was definitely at the level of an ancestor in the White Sun City. After all, the White Sun City's city lord, Feng Tianhe, was only at the undead realm. The strongest ancestor of the Blood Rain Mountain was only a 9th stage profound sage. Although Li Di's strength was not on the same level as the ancestor of the Blood Rain Mountain, his status was higher than the ancestor of the Blood Rain Mountain, because he was an outstanding disciple of the Heavenly Slaughter sect. Although the Li family was decorated with lanterns and streamers, Li Di's expression was not good. At this time, he was sitting on the main seat of the Li family's main hall. Only the Li family's patriarch was qualified to sit on this seat. However, the Li family's patriarch, Li Yongyuan, was sitting on the side of the main hall. This was the holy world, a world where strength was respected. Even if Li Di sat on this seat, Li Yongyuan did not dare to make sound. Who killed Li Diyu? He was killed near the White Sun City, and you didn't know? How did you protect him? A bunch of trash. Li Di's expression was indifferent as he glanced at the many higher-ups of the Li family in the main hall. His voice was cold and filled with killing intent. Chapter 1255. Unlike the crowded cabin before entering Soul-Devouring Island, there was only Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu in the spacious cabin. Big brother Murong, where are we going? We've been in the sea for a few months. Gongsun Ningyu looked at Murong Yu in confusion. In this month, they had passed by a few islands. However, these islands were much smaller than Soul-Devouring Island. After walking around, they did not find anything. Let's keep going. Murong Yu replied indifferently. Gongsun Ningyu was speechless and continued to ask, Big brother Murong, do you still know the way? What if we get lost? The vast sea secret realm was just too big. Most importantly, they were all sailing in the boundless sea. Without the islands as a reference, they would not be able to identify the direction. That was why Gongsun Ningyu was so worried. However, for Murong Yu, getting lost was not something that could happen to him. As long as he teleported, he could return to the entrance and even appear in the sacred realm. Is there an island like Soul-Devouring Island in front? So many people are going there? Gongsun Ningyu could not help but exclaim after half a month. After Murong Yu took control of the ship, Murong Yu found out that he could see the outside from the cabin, and there would not be any water vapor floating in. Since a few days ago, Murong Yu and Gongsun Ningyu had seen Yu Luo's bone demon ships appearing around them. They were all flying in the same direction, big and small. Big brother Murong, I think I see a big ship like ours. Right now, they're flying towards us quickly. Will they bump into us? Originally, Murong Yu ignored Gongsun Ningyu's mutterings. He used every breath to study the soul-devouring orb's ability. However, when he heard this, his eyes, which had been slightly closed, suddenly opened. Immediately after, he saw that just a few hundred kilometers behind him, a large ship that was even larger than the one he was on was shooting towards him. Murong Yu's expression changed slightly, and he cursed in his heart. The ship he was on belonged to Wu Bai, but Wu Bai belonged to an organization. In other words, the place he was in was the property of a certain organization. As for Murong Yu, how could this organization let him off the hook for killing people and stealing their treasures? Increase the speed and move forward quickly, Murong Yu said in a deep voice. Gongsun Ningyu obediently poured a large pile of Saint crystals into a furnace on the ship. Such a huge ship naturally burns St. crystals as fuel to move forward. Is that the brother in front? Please stay here. Just as Gongsun Ningyu poured out the St. crystals, a thunderous voice came from afar. At the same time, a few experts appeared on the Class A ship behind them, their bodies flickering with the light of power. Boss, this ship should belong to our great dragon sect. But why isn't there a flag of our great dragon sect? A man looked at Murong Yu's ship and frowned slightly. On their ship, a flag embroidered with a black dragon was fluttering in the wind. Originally, Murong Yu had a similar flag on his ship, but Murong Yu cut it off and threw it away. Could it be that this ship was taken by force? Another man looked at Murong Yu's ship with a gloomy face, his eyes flashing with a cold light and filled with killing intent. In White Sun City, who dares to touch our great dragon sect? Although we're not as strong as Bloodrain Mountain, they wouldn't dare to steal our ship. The man who was called boss had a calm expression and continued. Maybe they were attacked by fierce beasts. Second brother, go take a look first. The one who spoke was Li Chong, the boss of the three. Li Yu and Li Shang were the second and third brothers. Like Wu Bai, they also controlled the ship. Inside were all saints who were searching for treasures in the vast sea secret realm. At this moment, the second brother, Li Yu, had already soared into the sky and shot toward Murong Yu. His figure flickered and appeared on the deck of Murong Yu's ship. Then, he strode toward the cabin. Big brother Murong, what should we do? Seeing that he was about to enter, Gongsun Ningyu immediately became anxious. Act according to the circumstances, Murong Yu said calmly and looked at the cabin door with a calm expression. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the cabin door was opened, and Li Yu's tall figure stepped in, then closed the door again. Seeing that there were only two people in the huge cabin, and these two people looked unfamiliar, Li Yu couldn't help but be startled. Then his face turned gloomy, and his body exploded with a strong, killing intent. Streaks of killing intent spread out from his body, filling the entire cabin in an instant. Gongsun Ningyu's face turned pale, and at the same time, she groaned. A cold light flashed between Murong Yu's brows, and he stepped in front of Gongsun Ningyu and looked at Li Yu indifferently. Who are you? Where are the people on this ship? Li Yu's face was gloomy, and he looked at Murong Yu with killing intent. His eyes were filled with displeasure. When we entered this ship, there was no one. Could it be that there should be people on this ship? Murong Yu originally wanted to talk nicely with the other party. However, the other party immediately put on a show of strength, and he was immediately unhappy. This ship belongs to our Great Dragon sect, and you're not disciples of the Great Dragon sect. I'll give you a chance to speak honestly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Li Yu's voice was cold, and he looked at Murong Yu with disdain. He really didn't put two first-order saints in his eyes. Murong Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you want? What impoliteness? Li Yu's killing intent rose sharply. Since that's the case, I can only take you down personally and read your soul. An ant-like existence dares to be so arrogant. You really overestimate your abilities. As he spoke, Li Yu's hand reached out and grabbed Murong Yu. Perhaps he didn't want to destroy the ship, but his hand didn't erupt with too much pressure. However, his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Murong Yu and fiercely clenched his fist. Since you want to die, don't blame me for being ruthless. Murong Yu sneered. He didn't want to kill anyone. However, there were always some idiots who thought they were very strong and wanted to kill him. For such people, Murong Yu would usually fulfill their wishes. However, the one who died was not him. Soul Strangle. Murong Yu stood on the spot. With just a thought, his soul flame of chaos shot out from his soul space like thousands of arrows. Then, it strangled Li Yu with lightning speed. Almost at the same time as Murong Yu's soul attack, Li Yu's heart was shrouded by an extremely strong aura of death. Immediately, he was greatly shocked, although he didn't know what kind of power filled him with the aura of death. Even so, he still decisively retreated and flew backward. However, how could his speed compare to the speed of the soul attack? At the same time, The terrifying flame of primal chaos had already rushed into his spiritual space and fiercely bombarded his soul. After an incomparably shrill scream, Liu's entire soul was crushed into pieces. He died directly. Under Murong Yu's guidance, Liu's soul fragments quickly rushed into his soul space and were refined by his soul. At the same time, he took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab Liu's body. If the ship was destroyed by him, then it wouldn't be able to withstand the terrifying steam of the sea. Second brother, what happened? Liu's scream spread far and was immediately heard by Li Chong and Li Shang. Immediately, the two of them looked at each other and then soared into the sky. Like hawks pouncing on their prey, they pounced on Murong Yu's ship. Boom! Boom! Immediately, their auras burst out, covering the sky and earth. The terrifying aura suppressed the sea, causing huge waves to rise. Mid-level, undying realm powerhouse. Murong Yu's expression changed drastically. Li Chong and Li Shang were both undying realm powerhouses. Fortunately, Liu was only a great sage. Otherwise, Murong Yu would have been in trouble. However, he was also in danger now. Soul attack. Murong Yu roared in his heart and raised his one-star soul to the limit. The strongest soul primal flame of primal chaos shot out, forming two torrents in the void. The two torrents shot towards Li Chong and the other man. Soul attack. Third brother, retreat quickly. Li Chong immediately felt the soul attack. While his expression changed drastically, he had already called Li Shang to retreat. At the same time, Murong Yu waved his hand and took Gongsun Ningyu into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then he took a step forward and flew out of the Yu Luo's bone demon ship. Whoosh! His angelic wings flapped wildly. Coupled with teleportation, Murong Yu quickly disappeared from Li Chong and Li Shang's sight. At the same time, the ship was taken away. Third brother, stay here and watch the ship. I'll go after him. Li Chong threw out Li Yu's soul jade slip, which had been shattered into a pile of powder and ordered with a murderous aura. Then he soared into the sky and chased after Murong Yu. Boss, you must kill him and avenge second brother. Li Shang roared. He also wanted to chase after him. However, he could not give up the ship in his hand. Otherwise, even if he killed Murong Yu, he would not have a good ending. Soul attack. Ha! What a good soul attack. Even if you escape to the end of the world, I will definitely kill you. Li Chang's eyes were red. His body flashed with terrifying killing intent. His figure turned into a stream of light in the void and quickly streaked across the sky, chasing after him. Chapter 1256. The two of them, one in front and one behind, swept across the void like shooting stars, shooting forward quickly. Because both of them wore armor forged from the bones of Luo demon beasts, the water vapor of the secret realm had no obvious effect on them. Therefore, both of them were moving as fast as they could. Murong Yu, who displayed his maximum speed, was extremely fast. However, the difference in strength between him and Li Chong was too great. Even though he had escaped first, Li Chong quickly caught up to him. Little bastard, let's see where you can run to. Li Chong gritted his teeth, his voice extremely cold. The moment Murong Yu entered his attack range, he threw a punch across the air. Boom! The terrifying soul, chaos fire tore through the void, strangling Li Chong like a torrent, forcing him to stop. Although he was an intermediate undead powerhouse, his soul was not strong, and there was no need for him to risk his soul being attacked to kill Murong Yu, because there was no need. However, because he stopped, his attack naturally slowed down. However, Murong Yu took advantage of this opportunity and dashed out of his attack range in a flash, causing his attack to miss. Li Chong was furious and chased after him again. However, there was a limit to his attack range, and he did not dare to get too close, because once he entered the attack range, Murong Yu's soul chaos fire would burn wildly. Therefore, the current situation was that neither of them could do anything to the other. Li Chong could not kill Murong Yu in a short time, and Murong Yu could not kill Li Chong either. Neither of them could kill the other. Now, they were competing to see who could last longer. No matter who it was, once his power was exhausted, he would be killed by the other party. Little bastard, you will never escape from me. Although the holy world is big, there is no place for you. Li Chong attacked Morong Yu wildly, cursing constantly. Your attack did not even touch the corner of my clothes. Wait until you touch the corner of my clothes. Morong Yu retorted. Anyway, he did not need to waste energy to speak. Li Chong was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. If Morong Yu's soul was not a sage, then he would have been able to crush him to death with a single finger. But now, a mid-level, undying realm expert like him couldn't do anything to a First-Order Saint. Once news of this spread, Li Chong would no longer be able to remain in the Saint's world. However, so what if he vomited blood? This was how heaven-defying a soul saint was. He just couldn't do anything about it. What's the situation? An undead realm expert was actually chasing after a saint? And that undead realm expert looks flustered and exasperated? There were already many people passing through this area of the sea. Therefore, when Morong Yu and Yi Zichen flew past, they naturally couldn't avoid being seen by them. However, after seeing it, they didn't believe it at first. However, when he wanted to take a second look, he discovered that Morong Yu and Yi Zichen had already disappeared. Are the sages nowadays so heaven-defying? Even an undead realm expert couldn't do anything about it? There's actually such a talent in our White Sun City? Immediately, some people who were clothes made from the bones of Yuluo beasts chased after them in order to find out what was going on. Therefore, more and more people gradually appeared after Li Chong. Because of the existence of these people, the anger in Li Chong's heart grew stronger. This was because he felt humiliated. However, after a while, he sneered coldly. Little bastard, prepare to die. As he spoke, he punched out fiercely. The terrifying power formed a huge fist that directly broke through the obstruction of the void and appeared not far behind Morong Yu. The huge fist exploded with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, suppressing the surrounding air and causing the surrounding air to explode continuously. Even the void was bombarded until there were layers of ripples. An extremely strong aura of death enveloped Morong Yu's heart. The huge fist hadn't landed on him yet. However, the terrifying aura had already suppressed his skin violently. Red blood continuously seeped out of the 1.08 billion pores on his body. In fact, Morong Yu's skin even started to crack like porcelain. It was obvious that the pressure from the fist had exceeded the limit of what he could endure. His physical body was very likely to explode. However, this was still secondary. As long as Li Chong didn't destroy his soul with a single punch, he wouldn't die. However, what made him gnash his teeth the most was that Li Chong's continuous attacks had already caused cracks to appear on Morong Yu's sacred weapon that was made from the bones of Yuluo beasts. If this were to continue, Morong Yu's sacred artifact would be destroyed. When that happened, Morong Yu would run naked in the sky above the secret realm of the sea. With his strength, he couldn't withstand it at all. It would be a sure death. This bastard isn't stupid. Morong Yu cursed in his heart. He quickly flew forward. At the same time, he had already taken out the Inyan Cauldron to meet the huge fist. At this moment, his soul attack had no effect. He was in Li Chong's attack range. However, Li Chong wasn't in his attack range. After a period of trial and error, Li Chong finally found a safe distance. He could attack Morong Yu, but Morong Yu's soul attack had no effect on him. Boom! The Inyan Cauldron slammed into the huge fist. Suddenly, an earth-shattering boom erupted. However, the fist didn't collapse. It only dimmed a little. However, the Inyan Cauldron was sent flying. Puff! Morong Yu opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body fell to the ground at a high speed. Crack! A crisp sound came from his body. Morong Yu's heart trembled because of the sound, because he saw that there was a huge crack on the divine weapon on his body. After a few more attacks, it would probably explode. Little bastard, run, keep running. Li Chong laughed. His expression was ferocious, but his eyes were filled with hatred. As he spoke, he threw punch after punch at Murongyu from a safe distance. Bang! Murongyu fell from the sky like a meteor and slammed into an island below. The huge force created a huge crater on the ground. However, Murongyu didn't stop at all. After crashing into the ground, he once again soared into the air and quickly charged forward. "Little bastard, you're still alive?" Li Chong was surprised. He directly attacked Murongyu hundreds of times, but Murongyu was still alive and kicking. He was just a little embarrassed. In fact, he didn't know that his attacks didn't hit Murongyu directly. Most of them were blocked by the Inyang Cauldron and Hichu Luoshu. Although the remaining power bombarded Murongyu's body, it kept collapsing. However, it was quickly repaired by the power of life. My speed can't be compared to Li Chong's. This bastard is a rank 5 Undying Realm expert. Fortunately, he was wary of my soul attack and saved his strength to deal with the sudden situation in the secret realm of the sea. If he attacked me with all his strength, I would have been killed long ago. Murongyu thought to himself as he fled. He had already devoured Li Yu's soul and read the information about Li Chong's strength and the giant dragon sect. Therefore, he knew the same thing as Li Yu. In fact, Murongyu guessed wrong. Li Chong was wary of his soul attack, but he didn't save his strength. Instead, he didn't want Murongyu to die so easily. He wanted to torture Murongyu to death slowly. Therefore, he attacked Murongyu neither lightly nor heavily. Moreover, Murongyu's speed wasn't as fast as his, so he couldn't escape from his attack range. A cat toying with a mouse. He felt that killing Murongyu just like that was too easy for him. It couldn't eliminate the hatred in his heart. In fact, towards the end, he deliberately weakened the strength of each attack. A cat toying with a mouse? Not long after, Murongyu also came to a realization. This made him very angry, and he felt incomparably sullen. If it were anyone else, they would feel humiliated to be teased like this. However, if you don't kill me today, you'll be the one who dies in the future. It's time now. Murongyu sneered in his heart. Then, with a flash of his body, he disappeared from where he stood. He's gone. Seeing Murongyu disappear into thin air, Li Chong was shocked. It doesn't matter if you're invisible or hiding in a space treasure, you'll die. You can't escape. Li Chong was furious and began to attack wildly. Instantly, the void within 100 million miles was filled with his power and slowed down. The air was constantly exploding, and the ground was blasted into a vacuum zone. However, there was still no trace of Murongyu. How can this be? He must be hiding in a corner. I must kill you. Li Chong was furious. He attacked the surrounding space even more violently. However, Murongyu was no longer where he was. Li Chong is a rank 5 Undying Realm expert, and Li Yu is the weakest of the three brothers. He's only a rank 9 Great Sage. Should I kill Li Chong? He's only a rank 1 Undying Realm expert. If I can sneak up on him, I'm confident that I can kill him. Murongyu took a step out of the He-Tu and Luo-Shu and appeared on the small island where he'd created a deep crater. It turned out that Murongyu wasn't the one who was hit. He borrowed the momentum to come down. When he came into contact with the ground, he had already set up many teleportation points. Then, he was teleported here. In fact, when he was being chased, he had the opportunity to enter the Hichu Luo-Shu. However, to teleport to the soul-devouring island, that was too far away. Murongyu didn't want to go back and come back again. It was too far. Chapter 12:57. Li Chong controlled the enormous moon Luo Bon Yao ship to charge through the sea, shooting in the direction Li Chong had left. Even if he encountered some gigantic island along the way, he did not stop at all. To him, killing Murongyu to avenge Li Yu was the most important thing. As for the others, he had already treated them well by not throwing them out of the ship. However, he did not meet Li Chong along the way. This was because the three brothers had information that could track each other's aura. Therefore, Li Chong knew that Li Chong had been chasing Murongyu. At this moment, Li Chong stood alone on the deck, looking ahead with a frown on his face. He really couldn't understand why Li Chong, who had reached the fifth order undying realm, couldn't even kill a saint. All of a sudden, an uneasy feeling appeared in Li Shang's heart. Before he could react, his heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death that appeared out of nowhere. There's a sneak attack. Li Shang reacted immediately. He immediately soared into the air and rushed in a direction based on his instincts. At the same time, his strength was raised to the limit. An incomparably terrifying power erupted from his body, enveloping him in an instant. However, after doing all this, Li Shang did not feel that the aura of danger in his heart had weakened at all. On the contrary, the aura of danger became even more intense. At the same time, his soul began to tremble. Waves of fear surged out from Li Shang's soul, shaking his entire body. Li Shang even felt despair in his soul. An aura of death spread from his soul and enveloped his entire soul space, then his entire body. Soul attack. Although Li Shang was not a soul saint, as a rank 1 undying realm powerhouse, how could he not know that he was being ambushed by a soul attack? Thus, his speed skyrocketed once again as he shot forward. However, he was escaping in a hurry, while the other party came prepared and caught him off guard. How could he escape? Boom! The soul flame of chaos rushed into Li Shang's soul space like a storm and filled it up in an instant. Then, a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth erupted, rushing towards Li Shang's soul like a tidal wave. Li Shang's soul started to tremble violently. Balls of soul power burst out from his body, attempting to destroy those soul chaos flames that were coming towards him. Li Shang's soul even wanted to rush out of his soul space. However, although Li Shang was an undead realm expert, his soul was not a saint. Therefore, his soul was completely vulnerable. However, even a corner dog could jump over a wall, let alone an undead realm expert like Li Shang. When the primal chaos flame rushed into his soul space, his power also rushed in crazily. Kill him! Kill! Kill him! Li Shang roared madly as he raised his strength to the highest level he had ever been in his life. Like a raging tsunami, he destroyed the incoming attacks. Rumble. Under his crazy actions, the invading soul flame of primal chaos began to be annihilated. Although only a small part of it was destroyed, it was still effective. Morong Yu, who was hiding in the dark, frowned. So the flame of primal chaos can be extinguished. This way, if I want to ambush someone stronger in the future, the chances of success will be much lower. While frowning, Morong Yu's speed was not slow. He pushed his one-star soul to the limit. Streaks of primal chaos flame rushed into Li Shang's soul space, turning it into a battlefield as it crazily attacked. Swish! 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 While destroying the flame of primal chaos flame, Li Shang's speed did not decrease at all. He quickly flew forward. He knew that as long as he was out of Morong Yu's attack range, he would be able to escape. Morong Yu also used his fastest speed to chase after him. Although Li Shang had tried his best to extinguish the flame of primal chaos flame, he could not stop it at all. At this moment, the terrifying flame of primal chaos flame had already attacked his soul. Instantly, his soul was like a piece of tofu as it began to be destroyed rapidly. I'll fight it out with you. Perhaps he knew that he was going to die. Li Shang roared loudly. His body, which was originally flying forward, suddenly stopped and then retreated violently. At the same time, he gave up on destroying the flame of primal chaos flame in his soul space and attacked with all his strength. Morong Yu did not expect Li Shang to come back. When he reacted, Li Shang's strength had already covered the sky and covered the earth. Kill him! Morong Yu roared in his heart. He used all his strength to crush Li Shang's soul into powder. At the same time, he quickly retreated. However, it was too late. Li Shang's strongest attack had already covered the sky and covered the earth. Morong Yu quickly flew forward. At the same time, he took out the Yin-Yang Cauldron and Hichu Luo Shu and surrounded his body to protect himself. Rumble, The yin-yang cauldron immediately clashed with Li Shang's power. After a while, it was sent flying. However, it successfully offset a part of the power. Puff! Murong Yu's mind was injured again. It was almost torn apart. As he coughed up blood, the crazy power had already bombarded the He-Tu Luo Shu. Instantly, the overflowing damage was crazily attacking Murong Yu. This was not just an injury to his mind. Even his physical body began to crumble under the bombardment. Even his soul was affected and started to be injured. Defend. Heal. In He-Tu Luo Shu, a large number of primal chaos saint veins had already started to burn. It formed a stormy wave of power that was crazily offsetting Li Shang's power. However, even so, there was still a large amount of overflowing damage. Bang. After a loud bang, Murong Yu's entire body exploded. However, the power continued to bombard him, aiming to strangle his soul at high speed. Murong Yu was furious. He used a large amount of power crazily. His body condensed again and successfully blocked the power that was attacking his soul. However, bang, the body that he had just condensed was destroyed again. Therefore, he condensed his body again. Then it was destroyed again. Finally, after more than 10 times, Murong Yu's body was destroyed. He finally rushed out of the attack range of Li Shang's power. After condensing his body again, Murong Yu looked behind him with lingering fear. At this time, Li Shang's power had not disappeared. However, it continued to attack. In the end, it hit the sea and created a huge crater in the sea. This was because Li Shang was already dead. If he was not dead, the one who would be dead would be Murong Yu. This made Murong Yu feel a lingering fear. An undead realm expert, even if it was the weakest first-order undead realm, had terrifying strength. Their strength far surpassed that of a stage 9 great sage. Even if Murong Yu's soul was a sage, he had to rely on a sneak attack to kill Li Shang. If Li Shang did not run from the beginning and chose to fight Murong Yu head-on, the one who would die would not be Li Shang, but Murong Yu. Looks like it's better not to do such stupid things in the future. Otherwise, if I'm not careful and fail miserably, that would be terrible. Murong Yu thought to himself. He took a step forward and grabbed Li Shang's storage ring. At the same time, he absorbed Li Shang's soul fragment. The soul of an undying realm expert was a great supplement for him. Then, he entered the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo and disappeared. As for the ship that Li Shang controlled, Murong Yu did not want to touch it. One reason was because there were hundreds of people inside. He did not need to make enemies with them. Moreover, he already had a ship. It was enough for him to travel around the secret realm. Most importantly, Li Chong would quickly rush over after hearing the news of Li Shang's death. As expected, not long after Murong Yu left, a murderous and angry Li Shang shot over from afar. The moment Li Shang died, he knew that Li Shang had died. Therefore, he rushed over as fast as he could. However, Murong Yu was too late. When he arrived, Murong Yu was already nowhere to be seen. However, this time, Murong Yu did not erase the traces he left behind in the void. Therefore, Li Chong directly displayed the image from before. However, when he saw that it was Murong Yu who killed Li Shang, Li Chong almost went crazy. This was because his 2 brothers had been killed by Murong Yu. Ah, little bastard. If I don't kill you, I swear I'm not human. Li Chong roared into the sky, his expression furious. His murderous aura spread out and formed a gust of wind above the sea. It was extremely terrifying. Ah, all of you die. At this moment, Li Shang had already arrived on his huge Yuluo demon ship. When he saw the ship, he had nowhere to vent his anger. He quickly threw a punch at it. Bastard! Li Chong, how dare you attack us? You're dead. Seeing this, everyone on the ship shouted angrily. However, no one dared to go out. This was because they did not have the sacred weapon made from the bones of the Luo demon beast. If they went out, they would die. Die, all of you bastards, die with my brother. Li Chong roared and threw 1,000,000 punches in an instant. After a loud bang, the ship was directly blown apart by him. None of the hundreds of sages escaped. They were all killed by him. Little bastard. Even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, I will kill you." After killing these people, Li Shang still had not vented his anger. He roared at the sky, and his figure flickered, disappearing from where he stood. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.